What's up? What's happening? Welcome in. It is the Take Command pregame show live from Tap Sports Bar at MGM National Harbor. That is Logan Paulsen. I am Craig Hoffman, and we are getting you set for Commanders and Giants coming up at 1 p.m. today at FedEx Field. Logan started the Friday podcast by saying this. I'll say it again. What a banger it's going to be. This is a game between two teams that are struggling on different levels. The Giants are struggling because they are extremely banged up. They've had a pretty terrible season by all accounts, coming off what was a surprising season last year where they win a playoff game. They've won just two, of course, one of them against the Commanders. But then, of course, the Commanders kind of up and down for much of the year, and these last couple of weeks have been struggles. Last week, the loss to Seattle at the buzzer. One of, I think, 5 games last week that ended at the buzzer, by the way, which is crazy, NFL record.
6 counting Monday Night Football or something.
Oh, that's right, Monday night, yeah. So just an insane weekend in the NFL, as they often are these days. But for Washington trying to rebound and keep their playoff hopes alive before a key stretch against a very tough schedule Thursday in Dallas. The phrase must win gets thrown around a lot. You have the mathematical must wins this time of year. They start to become a little bit more apparent for some teams. And while I don't think the Commanders mathematically are technically in must win territory yet, because you could have a bunch of other teams squander ahead of them, for all intents and purposes, this is a must-win game. It's one of the few you're going to be favored in the rest of the year, and if you're serious about making the playoffs, Logan, they've got to get things in gear today. And I think they've got to get things in gear early and jump out on the Giants. And if they do, it could be a somewhat of an easy day.
Yeah, 100%. What's the spread? Do you have it in front of you?
I can check.
I think this is you said there, you got to jump out ahead of this team, and I totally agree with that. I think this is a team that, in the Giants I'm talking about, that is led and helmed by the defense. Their best players on the defensive side of the ball. I think they've been a lot more active defensively in terms of being able to create sacks and turnovers. They're kind of in the middle of the pack in a lot of statistical metrics. But when you watch them, like if you aren't efficient getting the ball out of your hand, like they're going to create a lot of pressure. They're going to create a lot of sacks. They're going to create a lot of issue. And I think if you can offensively score some points early, defensively keep that offense quiet, which shouldn't be too hard. Now we'll talk about that in more detail a little bit, but I really believe this is a game where the offense has to set the tempo, get out, score some points, because offensively the Giants just aren't equipped. Like if you can beat their defense, there's nothing else going on for them, and I think that's a huge deal. So,
yeah, it's 9.5 is the spread that we've got in front of us
crazy.
As of now.
That's a crazy spread.
To think, right, that the Commanders are a team that could be favored by 9.5 with the season they've had at this point in the year is nuts, but at the end of the day, this is where the Giants are. And I think, to circle back to that game flow, which is something we've talked about, I feel like, a lot this year, but it's so important in this one because, the Giants are playing not just a backup, but a third-string quarterback in Tommy DeVito. If you can put the game on his arm, you feel like you got a pretty good chance. The longer they can stay balanced, the longer Saquon can be involved as a runner, the better chance they have. And also, there's going to be just a belief level on the defense. I mean, what's it like? And obviously, you were an offensive player, not a defensive player. Yeah. But, when you're in a game where you are just, we're down 20 in the second quarter. What is that like as a player, especially if you're on a bad team, it's towards the end of the year. You're just not going to try as hard. And there's human nature here. You're trying to put good stuff on tape. You're a professional, all of that. But on a blitz-happy Wink Martindale defense, maybe those blitzes don't come quite as quickly and quite as aggressively if you're up big as Washington. And not to mention you can, run the ball a lot more and not have to deal with that in the first place.
And I definitely think there's 100% merit to that. There was games early in my career where, I was too dumb to know that we were out of it, or, I was trying to, make a name for myself and show that I deserve to be on the team next year, and I'd be blocking somebody by, hey, man, chill out, man. It's week 11, and we're both out of it. And they'd say that to you, and it's like – and I never took any heed to that, but that's something that comes up as guys are thinking about not getting hurt. That's the worst thing, man, playing in a meaningful game late in the year, and the risk of injury is just always there. And so you're like, I don't want to be dealing with a high ankle sprain heading into my offseason, or an ACL or an MCL or something like that. So there is that's kind of feeding this, and I think the Giants are definitely going to have some of that stuff. And I think it's important to point out, while DeVito is not good, They have, I went back and watched all of his throws. I watched 153 throws of Danny DeVito, or dropbacks of Danny DeVito.
We can't do the Danny DeVito bit. It's Tommy DeVito.
Tommy DeVito, sorry, yeah.
Danny DeVito's an actor. He would not be a very good
Danny,
quarterback.
Tommy, whatever. We all know who we're talking about, DeVito. And he is they have enough explosives per game where guys are open and he just doesn't quite get it, or there's a sack or something. That makes me nervous a little bit about this game. Like, if you don't approach this professionally, you're going to look like an idiot. And I think that's something that entirely could happen. Like, they are not good. They're not good right now. They're really struggling. They look bad offensively. Their offensive line's banged up. Their skill position guys are banged up. But it's still a group of NFL players, right? Now, are they traditionally starters? No, but I think back to 2011 when I was here, and we won our last 2 or 3 games beating good teams because we just had a bunch of guys who were too dumb to know any different. We had like a bunch of backups. Like, I was starting, and it just was like the backup running back starting the backup tackle, and we win games. And you definitely don't want the Commanders to come out of this game with egg on their face, because they should win. But I do think it's important to acknowledge that however bad they look, I'm talking about the Giants, there are enough plays on film where you're like, ooh, if they hit that, this is a totally different ballgame.
Well, and that's the thing that I think if you want to say losing a game to them earlier in the year is beneficial, this is how it's beneficial. You want to not take the Giants seriously, or not go out and play your best ball and wonder what can happen. Just look at what happened.
100%.
Like, they've got 2 wins. They're 2-8.
Yeah.
You're one of the 2.
Yeah.
So I think that that's the motivation factor, the focus factor should not be hard. And also, I think for everyone on this team, they're in a very much we have something to prove type of mode. You got a bunch of guys defensively that are trying to fight for jobs, that are trying to prove that they should keep their starters' jobs moving forward, or are playing for contracts after the season. Obviously, offensively, this is a continual work in progress, and they want to see how good they can be. So from an attitude standpoint, and I will say this too, for all of Rivera's flaws that we talk about on occasion, throughout the 4 years of areas where this team has come up short, and his teams have come up short, going back to the days in Carolina, he doesn't have teams quit on him. He is very, very good at keeping the locker room focused, and they've only been truly blown out a couple times, and the biggest one of those is a couple of years ago against Dallas when they just don't have the horses. It's a COVID game, where was it Garrett Gilbert starts at quarterback and you just get your doors blown off, because not only was it Garrett Gilbert, 6 or 7 guys were out for that game, and so I don't think the focus level will be a problem. However, there's an execution issue that I think does give me, if I'm looking big picture at this game, some cause for concern. And it's the same exact execution issues, the same exact execution flaws that we've seen Washington struggle with this season. One, offensively, can they protect Sam Howell against a blitz-happy defense? Because another great way to lose this game is a sack, fumble, and a pick six.
100%.
All of a sudden you give up 14 points on offense, then this is a very different game. And you're down 2 possessions, obviously, to score.
I think even just look as far as the Dallas game, right? Watch the first quarter of the Dallas game. The defense, it should have been tied 7-7 going into the second quarter. 100% should have been, right? Because they get a 4th down stop, they get an interception by Dak Prescott, the ball's returned to the 15-yard line. Tommy DeVito cannot score. Right, that offense can't get it going. They missed the field goal.
Right.
It should have been 7-7, or at least 7-3. And that is kind of what we're talking about here. Is if you let that defense make a play, which they're perfectly capable of making plays. They're a little bit banged up in the secondary as well, but they've got, Dexter Lawrence. We've talked about him. He is on pace to be one of the best defensive players in the NFL this year. Right? They blitz enough to make you nervous. They've got guys with ball skills in the back end. Don't give them an opportunity. Don't give them one, because offensively they can't do anything. But don't give defensively. If they get even a sliver of daylight, this could be a long day for us, especially given the first matchup.
And then, so that's thing one. Thing two is big explosive plays by the Giants offense.
Yeah.
I mean, this is a Giants offense that down to down is not going to be able to execute very well because of a young quarterback that is not very good by NFL standards in Tommy DeVito, and an offensive line that is pretty terrible by NFL standards.
And they're getting, to be fair to them, they're getting healthy, but also kind of getting hurt
but
at the
also
same time.
Maybe not, because
Right.
Evan Neal, we already know, is out today, and Andrew Thomas is questionable at left tackle. So they might be getting healthier. They might be getting better, but they also might not. We know
Let's
right
just
tackle's
say
out.
They looked better in the Dallas game than they did against us in the first matchup, right?
Yeah.
Like they were a little bit healthier. And obviously now, like, we'll see who's playing, who's not playing, but it's not the same version of that group. They are playing a little bit better, but if guys are hurt, then obviously it takes a regression step.
And even then,
it's not great.
They're not a great unit.
Right.
So I think that, obviously the interior pressure getting going. And I think there was an interesting and big admission from Ron Rivera on Friday in his press conference. And he talked about, like, Gino was struggling a little bit, and if we could have had a little bit more pass rush, like, we probably win that game. And he talked about the lack of pass rush in there. And against New England, obviously the 2 games since the trade of Chase and Montez, like New England, Matt gets the ball out so quick, it's basically impossible to get serious pressure against them on a regular basis. Gino's a little bit different story, and they couldn't generate it for whatever reason last week.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's, I think everyone knows. I don't think it's like a secret that, they wanted to keep Montez real bad. And,
sure.
They couldn't keep him, and obviously you see why after the contract he gets paid in Chicago and obviously the trade value. But this is the nature of the team at the moment. And I do think that, one thing I'd expect to see today, especially after comments like that, is like as a defensive coordinator, you know what you have up front. You know what kind of players you have up front. How do you maximize those guys? And I think that's really where you're going to get to see like what Jack does and how he is as a play caller. I thought last week he called a pretty good game. I think they did a good job of not giving up any gigantic explosives. I'm talking minus the Walker run. But I do think that there is a, I would expect to see a little bit more pressure this week, especially after comments like that, right?
Yeah.
Can you maximize a banged-up, kind of bad offensive line for New York, a rookie quarterback? And I think the pressures they did call last week were good. I thought you could have called them more frequently, and I think that's what you're going to see this week is when you bring pressure, it does more than just bring more guys to the rush. It also gives your defensive linemen different rush angles and different matchups. And so I think the value of it, especially for this group, is going to be really dramatic. And I also think it's the personnel you have, too, now. Now you don't have to rush Chase and Montez. Now you can drop out Andre Jones. You can drop out Casey. You can do some different things from a rush standpoint, again, to maximize that group. So, I think those comments by Ron express a fair amount of frustration. That decision felt like it was a little bit – not over his head. He's the personnel guy, but like he wanted to keep Montez, wasn't able to
maximize this year,
right?
But you couldn't afford to with the trade that was on the table,
right? But so I think let's see what Jack's got, man. I think, and I expect him to do some stuff today that's a little bit different than what he normally does. So,
and by the way, you got some good blitzers in Jamin Davis, Quan Martin, Cam Curl. Let's see if they can get home and speed up Tommy DeVito today. But let's talk a little bit more about the protection of Sam Howell and the key to getting that right today. That's where we go next. It is the Take Command pregame show here on 106.7 The Fan and the Team 980. Folks watching live on YouTube, including the Hoffman Show producer, Anthony Haney.
Oh, is he watching?
Yeah, he said, hey, Craig. Hey, Logan. Hi, Anthony.
Yeah,
thanks for watching. Thanks for taking some time out of your Sunday morning. Maybe he'll actually listen to me during this show instead of what? No, I'm just kidding. That's Logan Paulsen. I'm Craig Hoffman. We're back in just a few minutes with more of the Take Command pregame show on a Burgundy and Gold game day.
Hey, it's Logan Paulsen.
Craig Hoffman. Take Command pregame show on Burgundy and Gold game day, 106.7 The Fan, the Team 980, and live on YouTube. Of course, also streaming live on the free Odyssey app. All right, Logan, as we're live here at Tap Sports Bar, MGM National Harbor, this is always the fun hour. It's quiet.
I know, I'm kind of bummed there's no game on today.
Yeah, I know. We've been spoiled with the European football.
Yeah.
But American football being played in Europe, if you will. But, yeah, there's nothing on this morning. I did watch, before I came in this morning, the Las Vegas Grand Prix from overnight last night.
Oh, nice.
Which was crazy. That's not really what people are coming to the show for, so I'll save thoughts on that for another time.
That's your personal viewing.
Yeah, it's my personal fun to watch race cars go 200 miles an hour down the Las Vegas Strip. So as for this game today, Washington obviously has to protect Sam Howell better than they did in the first matchup, and this is the matchup that, if we're just being blunt about it, got Nick Gates benched. The communication was bad up front. The targeting was bad. And obviously Dexter Lawrence is a handful that Nick Gates could not handle. How big of a deal – let's just start like kind of isolated here actually. How big of a deal is it today to have Tyler Larson at center as opposed to Gates? In part just the stylistic matchup of 30 pounds heavier versus Dexter Lawrence, not to mention the experience that he brings compared to Gates.
Yeah, I mean, I think, that's going to be a huge matchup, obviously, today. And, Dexter Lawrence is the best nose guard in the NFL. And he's 350 pounds. He's a good athlete. He understands how to pass rush from the position, which is something you don't see very often. So I definitely think it's good having someone in there, definitely from an experience standpoint, obviously the size standpoint. I feel like, I'm trying to remember back, I feel like they played in the first matchup last year. Larson played pretty well against him. Stylistically, they match up really well, but also I feel like Lawrence has matured as a player. So I'm really kind of curious to see how Tyler handles everything. I'm not saying that because he's bigger he's going to be better, because it's more technical. Like the way that Dexter Lawrence kind of turns people's pads and gets that inside hand placement, grabs the handlebars of the shoulder pads and kind of crank people's shoulders open and then rip through, is very unique to his size and the way he plays with good leverage and gets his pads down. All those different things. So I think, it's going to be an interesting chess match. And it's not going to be Larson by himself, because that would be foolish.
Right.
If you can, let's make sure we can get multiple hands on that guy. And I think that's one thing about Wink's system that is tough, is that it helps maximize those one-on-one matchups. Like we were talking about Jack doing for our defense. I think Wink does a pretty good job of saying we bring pressure to ensure one-on-ones with our best player, who's a nose guard. And I think that's something you'll see today. And so I definitely think that's going to be a huge matchup for Tyler.
Yeah, definitely. One thing that I think is interesting, and Ron has talked about this in the last couple of weeks, is, and also actually they talked about it a little bit after that game, like Sam has gotten more involved in the protection calls as of late, and some of that was we got to help Gates out, maybe Sam can help out. But with Larson in there, it's been the same thing, and some of the times they've given up pressure, they've put a little bit more of that on Sam.
Yep.
Is that an ability to diagnose thing where the centers are missing stuff and Sam sees it better, or has a great knowledge of this offense? Or is it just by putting that on him, he knows where the pressure, what is happening, and it's more of a holistic view for him that he's then able to react better?
I think it's probably a little bit of both. I've always been maybe this is because, again, the systems I came up in, but I've always been a believer the quarterback should call the protection. That's nothing to do against the center, but I think that the center, they can't see everything. They're in a three-point stance, their heads down, sometimes their heads between their legs when they're on the silent count. So how can they be expected to see safety rotation and see the nickel and see how many, there is a standard that they should see some of that stuff, but I also think having another set of eyes with the quarterback is helpful, because the center can call somebody. He's like, no, hey, let's call this guy. This guy's actually backed up a little bit differently because the angle for him is better. I'm talking about the quarterback now.
Yeah.
So I think it's great because it gets you – I think it helps kind of the view. Also, I think it helps the quarterback take ownership of that stuff, because when you call the protection, you know where you're hot now. Hey, I called this guy. That's where they're going. I have to be aware of, the will linebacker now, because he's not in the protection. He's going to be the hot guy. So I think anytime you give any athlete more ownership of what they're doing and they buy it and they grab it, it makes them better football players, because it just gives them a better understanding of what you're doing offensively. So I think him being more involved helps, with the perspective and getting it targeted correctly, just because of the center's perspective. And then also I think it just helps them take ownership of what they're doing at a higher level for sure.
That's Logan Paulsen. I'm Craig Hoffman here on the Team 980, 106.7 The Fan. This is the Take Command pregame show. Antonio Gibson's doubtful today,
Yeah.
so we'll see if he can all of a sudden have his toe magically heal during the pregame warm-up. If not, he is likely out. Then you've got, obviously, Brian Robinson, Chris Rodriguez, Derek Gore getting the call-up today on the running back side. But I'm actually curious the wide receiver matchups. You know, Deonte Banks is super physical, the rookie out of Maryland. And Terry, I think, wanted a little bit more of him last time.
Sure.
And then you've got Jahan Dotson, who was completely silent against Seattle. 2 targets, 0 catches.
Yeah.
Adoree Jackson's out for New York. So you're talking about Jahan against a backup corner. I feel like there should be opportunity there. If you're EB, how do you make sure those guys get involved early and get the touches that you want them to have? And also, hopefully, that helps you get out to that early lead that we talked about being so important from a game flow perspective in this one.
Yeah, well, I think it kind of goes back to the protection, honestly, and then like what you want to, what your offensive perspective is. And I think when you look at a couple of games this year, the last 2, Las Vegas and Dallas, I think one of the things that sticks out to me anyway is that teams didn't go like a lot of max pro. They basically said, we're going to spread you out, we're going to ID our matchups that we want, we're going to check the plays that we want to run, and maximize our skill position guys, find our best matchups. And so, I think there's going to be there's 2 schools of thought. You know, Keim on his podcast today was like, oh, we got to add more protectors. We got to, they were more effective with 6-man pro. I think that number's slightly skewed because they ran so much sprint game. You're leaving tight ends and backs in for that kind of stuff. But I think spread them out. Let's see our matchups. Let's see the coverage structure. Let's Sam own that. And then I think you can get into some of these matchups where, Jahan gets a favorable one-on-one or Terry gets a favorable one-on-one. And I think, to your point, like get that going early. And I think one of the things about this offense that's important to just recognize is they don't do it's the offense. It's not the matchups. They really prioritize the concepts and kind of the quarterback reading through the progression to get the ball where it's supposed to go, as opposed to saying, hey, we need to get Terry 5 or 6 touches in the first half or whatever it is. So I think that's important to remember, too.
Well, could that change today, though, if the Giants play a lot more man coverage? Because that's the thing, is like that philosophy is super sound when you're playing a bunch of zone, or playing against a bunch of zone, which is what most teams in the league run predominantly. Giants play a little bit more man behind some of these blitzes. So, in man, like it's about winning the route or about winning. I mean, obviously you can run picks and rubs and stuff like that to make some of that stuff easier.
Sure.
But often it's like, okay, what is my best matchup, because they've got to win on their route, and it's not about exploiting an area of space that's a weakness for a coverage.
No, I think that's a great point. I think, obviously you want to find your matchups, and it could change, but I do think, I don't know, at least in the stuff that we've seen so far, like their man beaters are very specific. It's like we're going to run 3 slants, we're going to run a choice, we're going to run a lookie, right? And that's stuff that other teams have run as well. So I think that's all on the table. It's about maximizing those opportunities for sure. But in order to get those opportunities, we've got to make sure we're protected. And so it's kind of this kind of cat and mouse game a little bit with Wink, obviously, which is what we've talked about a lot so far. But yeah, that's kind of my thought. Yes, you can get those matchups earlier, but I think you just got to be aware of when you're taking them. Like you can't just be like, hey, we have a better matchup here, let's take this shot. Because if Wink's bringing an exotic pressure and you can't get it picked up, it doesn't matter if Terry wins,
sure.
Right? So it's kind of like walking that balance of saying, this is when we're going to take our shot. This is how we're going to find the matchup. Wink has this tendency in 3rd and 8 to run this pressure, to run this kind of coverage. Let's make sure we've got the right play called in this moment. And that's going to be really challenging, obviously. But I think that's kind of what you're looking at here is, and I would say, like, also, it's okay here. I know we want to get out to a big lead here early offensively. It's okay to kind of be a little bit conservative, I think, too. I don't think you need to be putting the pedal to the metal. I know that's really not.
You don't need to throw it deep every snap.
That's not EB's nature. You know what I mean? But I think that's something to remember too. It's like how do we maximize this? I think it's okay in this game because you're not going to get a lot of pressure from their offense. Let the game come to you, right? It's okay to like run the concepts we talked about, and then in that specific moment, hey, it's 3rd and 3. They're in man coverage. Now let's hit it. You know what I'm saying?
And one thing that I think Terry McLaurin told John Keim in an interview they did this week was like, he's starting to get a little bit more movement around some of these formations. Like EB seems to be being like, okay, well, I want to run this concept because I like it, and the primary is going to be the number 3.
Sure.
So let's put Terry at number 3.
Yeah, that's definitely true.
So there is seemingly a little bit more of that, at least that's what Terry told Keim earlier in the week. All right, that is Logan Paulsen. I'm Craig Hoffman here on the Take Command pregame show. Coming up next, half an hour in, like each and every version of this show, Kevin Sheehan will join us here on 106.7 The Fan and the Team 980. Take Command pregame show live from Tap Sports Bar, MGM National Harbor. You can come hang out with us in person starting at 11 o'clock when the doors open. We'll be over the loudspeakers, everything. You can come take in the show as you get ready for Commanders and Giants at 1 p.m. We're with you on 106.7 The Fan until then. We are on the Team 980 until 11:45 today, and we got Maryland women's basketball coming up there. Right now, though, it is time to welcome in Kevin Sheehan as we do half an hour into the show each and every week. Kevin, how are you doing? And do you remember what to do with your mornings without European football on, without a London game, without a Germany game?
Oh, I love those international games. They're perfect for people who like to dabble in the art of wagering on football. Although I had the Patriots last week, and they missed a field goal, and Mac Jones threw an interception into the end zone, so didn't work out. But
that's kind of what you get for betting on Mac Jones, though. At this point, I said that's kind of what you get for betting on Mac Jones at this point.
Yeah.
You and Bill Belichick.
Still amazing they just threw in Zappe for the final drive of that game because he had actually moved them. Mac Jones had a couple of times, but whatever. Enough about New England and Indianapolis and Germany. We got a big one today out of FedEx.
We do.
Glad they didn't win last week because this would have stopped. At 6-5.
So, like the stakes of this are so fascinating to me because, I mean, in some ways they really are in football terms existential, right? The season, the coaching staff, like what are we talking about today? With a win, like where does that set them up? And then obviously worst case scenario happens, like how bad are we talking here?
Oh, I don't know. I mean, it's the NFL. Things change so dramatically, every few weeks. If they won today and went to Dallas and somehow competed, you'd certainly be hearing from them that the season's on because somebody in the NFC is probably going to make the playoffs at 8-9 or 9-8. But really, like we've talked about all year long, I think the majority of fans have a bigger view on this thing. This season's already been, a Christmas present come early with new ownership, and there's a lot of intrigue and anticipation about what will happen at the end of this season, which will really be more so the beginning of the Josh Harris ownership. tenure, when he gets to bring in the people that he wants to bring in to run the football operation, to pick the people, to pick the players, et cetera. And it'll feel more like the true restart than I think this season has been. But living in the moment, like if they win today, they're 5-6, and they could be a game out of the playoff spot, the 7-seed playoff spot by the end of Monday night.
Yeah, absolutely. So what do you think about this matchup? Obviously, in the first game, didn't go well for the Commanders. Defense, dominant performance by the New York Giants. Do you think, what are your thoughts on today's matchup?
I'm actually concerned about it because so I went back and watched the Dallas game from last week, and trust me, I'm not going to tell you that a 49-17 game was anything but 49-17. But the Giants actually in the first quarter played pretty well. They got a goal line stop. They got a pick. Dak threw a terrible interception in that first half. And the one thing I noticed, and the reason I went back to watch it, is because I had a guy on from New York this week, a Giants guy, and he said DeVito can actually throw it.
Yeah.
He's got a pretty lively arm, and I think he does. And so I'm concerned, given this defense and the way it's played, if they don't stop Barkley, if they don't stop the run, and all of a sudden you get some play action and you get some bootleg, and all of a sudden it becomes easier. It's not like this guy is a noodle arm, 5'8", undrafted free agent running around trying to do things. He actually looks more the part than I thought I would see. And look, they still have Barkley and they still have Dexter Lawrence on the other side of the ball, and I'm a little bit concerned about this one. This should be a win. It's not the same team they face. There's no Darren Waller. There's obviously not a professional quarterback that's experienced. So if you can't win this game, we see, and I haven't thought for one moment that we would see in-season changes, but this is one that I would bet that ownership is expecting to be a W.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Kevin Sheehan with us, of course, the Kevin Sheehan Show, 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. Weekdays on the Team 980. DeVito, by the way, also runs about a 4.6, so you got to worry about him scrambling around a little bit as well.
A little bit.
Yeah,
no doubt.
So that begs the question, like strategically, if we got the aggression, conservative strategy slider, how aggressive are you if you're Jack Del Rio?
Well, I think first of all, you just have to stop the run. I mean, you'll see if they do a lot of what they've done recently, you'll see Barkley and Wildcat. They'll do that a bunch, and they're going to try to get him as many touches. I think actually that's the one thing Washington's done pretty well this year, except for maybe the very beginning of the year when Denver ran it on him a little bit, and even Connor in the opener ran it on him a little bit. But they've been pretty consistent, other than the big chunk play in New England, stopping the run. And I think if that happens, I don't even know if you really need to go after him and give him the opportunity to maybe get a big play. There's no Waller. He was a factor in that first game. He's out. Hyatt can really run. We saw that in the first game. I just think today it's all about if they can make sure that Barkley doesn't make it easier for DeVito by running the ball well and giving them opportunities on play action and boot. I think that defensively it should be their best day, but I'm not convinced it's going to happen.
I mean, yeah, that's kind of what I think we're both in the same boat. It's like it should be good, but every time you've said it should be good or I've said it should be good, they've struggled a little bit. And
Right.
For however limited the weapons are, this defense is one of the worst in the NFL, and there's a reason for that. But on the other side of the ball, I'm pretty optimistic, and I think the big storyline is protecting Sam Howell. I think he's a different football player now going into this game than he was in the first matchup. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think not only is he a different football player, but I think the offensive coordinator is a different offensive coordinator. And so that gives me great hope, not only today, but for the rest of the season, because he's figured out that, too many pure dropbacks, and they had too many of them in the first half, and they had issues up front, which made it even worse. But I don't see why. I mean, here's the thing. The Giants' strength is defensively. Dexter Lawrence is one of the best players in the game as an interior defensive tackle / nose. The linebackers, McFadden and Okereke, I don't know if Okereke's playing, but they both have played well at times this year. And then, they've got a young corner in Banks from Maryland who's had moments. He had a moment against us a few weeks ago. But I feel good about this offense right now, the way he's called it, the way Sam's grown, and there should be too many players with the ball in their hands early enough for the Giants to shut it down. I mean, I even feel like the 20-point effort against New England should have been more than that. I mean, it should have been at the end of the first half with the pick, but they played well offensively. Yeah, there have been a couple of spots here and there. There were 3 drives in Seattle and 3 drives at the end of the game against New England, but I feel like that's the part that I feel most confident about going into today. It's just you can't let the Giants' best defense become its offense against our weakness right now, which is the defense. So let's hope it doesn't get into, all of a sudden you look up there and the Giants have run twice as many plays.
Kevin Sheehan with us, wrapping up with him here on the Take Command pregame show. All right, I always like to ask you what you like betting-wise around the rest of the league.
Well, there are some of those games. I mean, the Giants are a major anti-public side today, plus the number. I mean, Washington hasn't been a double-digit favorite, guys, in 6 years. I mean, that's almost amazing. And they're not that today either. I mean, I see 8.5s and 9s out there now. There's definitely been some sharp money on New York all week, so I kind of like the Giants plus the number a little bit. And I kind of like the Panthers a little bit today against the Cowboys at home. Dallas has not been super consistent. And again, watching that game last week, it was 49-17. I understand that. The Cowboys are explosive at times offensively, but the game was weird the way it started. Like the Giants were actually in that game going to the second quarter, but there were 3 quarters left. So those are a couple of them.
That whole 4-quarter game's a real pain in the butt sometimes.
Yeah, those 4-quarter games really tend to get you. But it wasn't that way to start with. So anyway, I like Carolina. I like the Giants a little bit. And the Cardinals today against a Houston team that everybody is believing in right now. So I'll go opposite of that.
Interesting. Some other time we should do a show on how good the Wizards would be if they didn't have to play 4 quarters, Kevin. But that's, again, a different sport and a different show. You said you like the Giants with the number. Which team do you actually like on the scoreboard today with all of your nerves?
Washington should win this game. Maybe it's something like 23-16, 23-17, something like that. I don't know. No. I mean, I don't have a good feel for this, and I am a little bit concerned. But just because it seems like, when you play a team that most of the fan base believes they'll win. We've seen 2 of those this year, Chicago and the Giants, and they didn't win either one of those games. So
I don't even think the fan base thinks that they're going to win this anymore. Like that's how scarred they are from the first Giants game and from the Chicago game. It's what all of us spent all week being like, there's no way they can lose. There's no way they can lose. And then they lost.
Yeah, I'd go a step further. I think now people are really dialed in on just watching the development of Sam Howell over the final 7 games, and then getting ready to see what happens in the offseason when I think everybody is expecting a major regime change.
Yes. Kevin Sheehan is on, not just like most of us, Monday through Wednesday this week with the Thanksgiving holiday. You're on Friday morning, too, as well, right? Yeah,
it's the day after a game. I will be in there Friday doing the show after the Cowboys and Washington football franchise play on Thanksgiving Day. Hard for me on a Thanksgiving Day game between 2 longtime rivals to say Commanders-Cowboys. I'm still not used to that yet. So
one day.
More time.
One day. Or perhaps they'll change the name again and you'll have to adjust to something else.
I think we might be getting that at the end of the year.
All right, that is Kevin Sheehan, 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. on the Team 980, the Kevin Sheehan Show podcast as well. Sheehan, thank you, sir, and we'll talk to you in a couple of weeks here on the Take Command pregame show.
All right, boys. Happy Thanksgiving.
Happy Thanksgiving to you as well. That's Kevin Sheehan. That's Logan Paulsen. I am Craig Hoffman here on a Burgundy and Gold game day. When we get back, Kevin mentioned that regime change, and Ron Rivera was asked about it directly this week. What he say, if you haven't heard it yet, and what's our reaction to what he said, that is next in Coach Speak before the Junkies at the top of the hour here on the Take Command pregame show. Take Command pregame show on a burgundy and gold game day. Craig Hoffman, Logan Paulsen with you. Doors opening here in just a few minutes at TAPS Sports Bar, MGM National Harbor. Don't forget, after the game tonight, Logan and I will be back from FedEx Field on YouTube, Team 980, 1067, the fans pages, for the Take Command Instant Reaction Show. That'll be about 5:30, 90-ish minutes after the final whistle. I'll be down in the locker room and at the post-game press conferences, and so we will have reaction from all that and our thoughts on Giants and Commanders. Logan, it's no secret that Ron Rivera's job is on the line this season. You're entering year 4 of a 5-year contract. That's always a critical year for coaches. New ownership, that's always a critical thing for coaches. And they haven't won to the level that they want to. Yep. Also a pretty critical thing for coaches. And with all of those obvious things in play, and a rough couple of weeks coming up schedule-wise, or whatever other reasons that the reporters in Ashburn decided to ask the question on Friday, Ron Rivera was asked directly about his future. And I'll paraphrase here because it's a fairly long answer.
Is that his answer right there?
On how he thinks about his own future.
Paragraphs.
Yeah, it's a long one. He says, honestly, I really don't. He actually cussed a little bit. They for some reason, cut that out of the official transcript. Don't know why they did that. I really don't. I understand the situation of circumstances, but I'm not going to waver on anything. I'm going to stick to what I talked about in the spring, and that was the growth and development of the quarterback and the offensive unit. I think what we're doing and how we're doing things, it's kind of the progression of how it would be. My biggest disappointment has been we haven't played as well on defense as we needed to. Does that make my job security shaky? It could. I have no idea what Mr. Harris is going to do. And he goes on to talk about some of the recent struggles, the lack of pass rush against Seattle last week, and some of the more specific things that why the defense has not played up to the level that he's needed to win more games and thus have firmer ground underneath him.
Right.
So I want to talk about a couple of different aspects of this quickly here. But the biggest one I would like to get from you that I think is interesting from a former player's perspective is what it's like when these rumors are starting to fly around. Because you've gone through it here. Obviously, the end of the Shanahans here is something that a book could be written on and probably will if it hasn't already. And you've seen it in other places as well. How does / can it affect a locker room when you've got a coach whose future is uncertain, and especially when those things get spoken out loud?
Yeah, I think the thing for me is just like it's impossibly difficult, and especially when it's your first one. I know this team is not the most seasoned team in terms of guys coming from different organizations. It's really tough, and I think one of the reasons I've kind of got this calloused perspective on the NFL is because this happened to me 3 or 4 times during the course of my career, and it's just you get to a point where you've been around the game long enough, you understand the situation well enough, and you're like, people are going to get fired. And you kind of have to shift your perspective a little bit from people are going to get fired to I am not going to be one of those people getting fired. And really but I don't want to be in this bucket over here. And it's tough, man, especially when it's your first time because you have such good relationships with the staff. And even guys you don't like, really. You're just like, I don't want you met their family, you met their kids, you met their spouses, whatever it is. And it's just like, I don't want to see them have to move. I don't want to see them have to go on and do different stuff. And that's really, really challenging. And, talking with guys that I used to play with, like, it's hard because you're like, I hate this guy, but I don't want him to have to go through this adversity. In terms
I don't like him as professionally necessarily, but this is going to affect him personally and professionally.
Yeah, and it affects – and then the other thing that's really hard to kind of quantify is it affects you as a player professionally because you've built these relationships with these coaches. They trust you to a certain extent. And anytime there's turnover, especially when it's like the GM spot, GM head coach, that means the perspective about the roster completely changes. Totally. So it's a little bit of a mess. So really the only thing that I would kind of say, like as a player, the thing I would always kind of fall back on is just like I need to be doing what I need to do because I am auditioning not for – this staff, I'm auditioning for the next staff, and I'm auditioning for the 31 other staffs in the NFL. And that's how I approached it. So you'd be, we were 3-13 to finish out the 2013 season, and those last couple games, you just had to dig somewhere deep in your soul to be like, I'm going to put the best football I can out there on film because no one cares. The fans don't care. It's gross. Everyone hates it. But that is your resume for next season. So.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny you say that. That actually reminded me of my first radio job in terms of the GM and the coach. And, you might not like your boss, and then you're like, thank God they're finally fired. That happened to me. My boss got fired, and that was like on a Tuesday. And then they said that my position was no longer needed on Friday. Correct, and I was like, and on Wednesday and Thursday, I was like, yes, I'm so excited for this fresh start. And then you're like, Wait, what?
No, yeah.
Worked out for me. I fell up. I went from Lawrence, Kansas to working for ESPN in
There
Dallas.
you go.
So, sometimes it works out for the better. And now I'm here with Logan doing this show.
That's true, though, even for players. They forget that sometimes one of the things that hurts you is the perspective of the organization. Like, you're a role-playing whatever. Then you go someplace else, and it's like, oh, well, they view me in a different light, and I can get more opportunity. Kind of very similar to your story, for sure.
Yeah, so it can work out. The one thing I will say about this is, like, Ron is a football coach. I've criticized plenty for good reason over the years in terms of different games, decisions made, the way he's handled certain situations. Also praised for the way he's handled certain situations. I mean, he's been dealt, obviously, a tremendously difficult hand, speaking of personally and professionally, from the cancer to everything that went on with Dan and whatever. One thing that I think is important to point out is I think you, quote-unquote, need to fire a coach when things get toxic and in the same way that they just were in Las Vegas, right?
Yeah.
It's pretty clear that, like, Josh McDaniels needed to go. We'll see what happens these next couple of weeks with the actual results and what Josh Harris wants to do, depending on how that goes. But I think you can definitively trust Ron Rivera to be a professional and continue to prepare this team to the best of his abilities every day until his last with this organization, whenever that may be. And so I do think that's something that I appreciate about Ron.
Sure.
And, he's been through this before. He knows the score. He went through something very similar in Carolina. We're actually almost 4 years to the day of him getting fired in Carolina. But at the end of the day, like, you're never going to have a situation where it's completely toxic and you can't trust him to come to work and do the job. And that is a compliment to Ron Rivera's professionalism and his character. And we'll see how much that matters depending on the results over the next couple of weeks. With Logan, I'm Craig here on the Take Command pregame show. We're with you for another 45 minutes on the Team 980, all the way up until kickoff on 106.7 The Fan. Of course, we are all 3 hours on 106.7 The Fan and in the Team 980's YouTube pages, so you can always watch us there. If you're out driving around, go home, throw us up on the YouTube app on your smart TV, and take in the rest of this show as we get you ready for Commanders and Giants. Starting with the Sports Junkies, their perspective on the game next. With Logan, I am Craig here on the Take Command pregame show. We're also streaming live on YouTube at the Team 980 and at 106.7 The Fan from Tap Sports Bar at MGM National Harbor, where we are back live and the doors are open. Doors are also open outside. Got some nice fresh air coming in.
It's not too cold. It's like a beautiful day.
Yeah, it was pretty chilly this morning.
Yeah, I had to put a sweater on. Not a big sweater guy, but
not a big sweater guy.
No.
Oh, love a good sweater. Love a good sweater. Sweater weather's, it's good stuff. Anyway, apropos of none of that, Commanders and Giants are coming up. By the way, what is your favorite football weather to you? What's your favorite weather to play in?
Oh, it's got to be in the 45 to 47, kind of breezy. That's perfect because it's a little cold, not going to get too hot, not going to have that overheating, early season dehydration where I'm can't drink enough water because I'm big and fat. So it's perfect. It's perfect.
Okay, then.
Yeah.
No easy transition from that into the Sports Junkies' thoughts on the game.
Oh, Sports Junkies.
We do this every week. Why are you surprised?
I don't know. It's just I don't know when they come in usually, so I'm just here.
11 o'clock.
Here they are.
Single
11.
Time.
Who would have thought?
Who would have thought? The same time as ever. Did you know that we had Sheehan at 10:30?
Yeah, we just talked to him.
Yeah. And then Grant's going to be at 12:30.
Yeah. Oh, 12:30. Is it set time every day? Show?
The only time it really changes is when we don't start the show at 10.
Oh, gotcha.
So
I knew that. I'm just kidding. I didn't know it, actually.
He doesn't know. Anyway, here's the Sports Junkies' thoughts on the game.
All right, boys. Commanders faced the Giants about a month ago. Lost that one 14-7. This one feels different. Giants gave up 620 yards last week to the Cowboys, Cakes.
Yeah, this is a different Giants team than the one that beat the Commanders 14-7 at MetLife. I mean, they're on their third-string quarterback. Saquon Barkley is their only real offensive threat, and we saw him tweak his ankle in the blowout loss to the Cowboys last week. I mean, this is a team going nowhere fast. They're 2-8. I mean, they're going to be jockeying for a top 5 slot in the NFL draft in 2024. They can't wait for their season to be over. Maybe there's a glimmer of hope in early December when Tyrod Taylor comes off the IR because Daniel Jones is out for the season. Everything has gone wrong for this Giants team, and that's why this Commanders team has to pounce on a wounded opponent that's coming into their place this weekend. I don't think it's a particularly close game. Tommy DeVito shouldn't be out on an NFL field. He's only out there because of necessity. I think the Commanders handle the Giants today.
Well, I thought that when we played Chicago and they put a 40 burger on the board.
Okay, well, they have Justin Fields and DJ Moore. They don't have that sort of weaponry here.
They hadn't won in a year, and they embarrassed us. And then we lost to this same Giants team. Okay, different quarterback, but they still have Saquon. He may be nicked up. I don't know if you've looked at the defensive rankings, Cakes, but I think we're 31st in the league in points allowed.
I go to Cleveland, we're going to win the Super Bowl.
Second worst game of the season. He was sacked 6 times. So I'm nervous. I think that the good news is Bieniemy and Howell have gotten on the same page here in the last 3 or 4 weeks. The offensive line has played better since they've made some changes. So hopefully that continues. But this game scares me.
I understand why it scares you. You did just lose to them. And the Giants' recent history, last year, they lost to the Giants and they tied once. And, of course, they lost earlier this season. But to Cakes' point, it seems like a really beat-up, bad team in the New York Giants. And I do think, if you look at the last couple of weeks, Washington has done a better job, and Sam Howell's done a better job, and Eric Bieniemy has done a better job at protecting himself and protecting Sam Howell. Maybe the shift to Tyler Larson at center has helped. Maybe the more quick passing. We've seen some of the analytics. They're throwing more screen passes. It all seems to be working. I think the offense will be much improved. Defensively, if Tommy DeVito and this Giants team, they're averaging less than 12 points a game. If they over 17, I just don't think that the Giants will be able to keep up with Washington's offense. I know Washington only scored 7 last time. I like it in somewhat of a route, 30-13. I'll take the Commanders.
I'm going to bank on the team that has the offense that's clicking, that has 420-ish yards of offense and is averaging 26 points since the loss to the Giants. That's the Commanders. Commanders handle the Giants today. One-sided affair, 31-7, maybe even 38-7 if the defense has a pick six or a strip sack fumble return on Tommy DeVito. This one shouldn't even be close. If the Commanders drop this game, everybody should be fired. And I don't care that you're on a short week heading into Dallas. getting swept by a division foe with a second and third string quarterback at the helm is unacceptable. It cannot happen.
I feel like I'm in a time machine or something. Like we're talking about the 91 skip.
At about 30 seconds.
These blowouts. They don't blow teams out. In fact, they lose to teams that they should beat. I'll pick Washington begrudgingly because I do think on paper we should be better.
I mean, they're a big favorite.
I'm going to pick them at a 10-9 squeaker.
10-9. They only scored 10 points.
Yeah.
So you don't believe that the offense has gotten better since that first matchup?
I do. I believe this team is
3 points better.
I believe this team is destined to break my heart.
So you're picking a 1-point victory for a team that's been outscored by 148 points in the New York Giants.
Yep.
By far the biggest margin in the NFL.
I'm picking a squeaker.
Well, that still would be a victory Monday for us on the Junkies. So hopefully they get a win, get to 5-6. Back to you, boys.
All right, thanks, guys. Hopefully it is a victory Monday for us all tomorrow, Logan.
Yeah.
The score, if it's 10-9, then it's going to feel like a victory Monday. But technically it would be. I do feel like Rivera's teams one game a year just absolutely do exactly what they're supposed to. Like there's always like late in the year, like specifically later in the year, like they get that November stretch, they find a team like the Giants who's banged up, and like every year there's a game like this, and there's games earlier in the season that make you feel like there's no way. Like we can't be serious. How did that just happen? And we had one of those at the first New York game. We had it with the Chicago game. But I do feel like there's typically one game or so a year where it's like they come in as a pretty big favorite and they just straight up handle business. And for some silly reason, considering the history of this series recently, I feel like today could be that day.
I mean, it should be that. Like everything on paper. If we were to go through the whole spreadsheet, all like do our like a beautiful mind writing on the window stuff, everything points to this being a victory and a significant victory. Defensively, they're banged up. Offensively, they're banged up. The most important position in football for the Giants is a third-string guy who, while I think has some ability, is definitely not a starting caliber football player in the NFL at this moment. He could develop into something, maybe a career backup. Who knows? He's a third-string quarterback, right? You should be able to dominate that group. Their offensive line's banged up. All their explosive playmakers are banged up. Saquon Barkley's banged up. This should be one of those games. But like you said, you don't feel overly confident because – unlike those other games, unlike the Bears game, unlike the first Giants game, like there was plausible solutions for why they would come out. The Giants or the Bears would come out and win the game, and they went out and they did those things. This game, it's so hard to find that thing. Like maybe we do this later in the show, but if you're like, how do the Giants win this game? It's the margin for error for them because the talent is so banged up right now for them is so fine. It's so small. But there is a path, and it's just about can the Commanders do what they're supposed to do, eliminate the big plays, and find some level of competent execution on offense is really what it comes down to.
Yeah, so actually, I guess in a way we could do that next because next we have tail of the tape. Like, what are the things that the Commanders can take from the first matchup that they need to clean up to ensure that they don't have a repeat of the first matchup where they lost 14-7. After that, we will go around the NFL. We'll also have the inactive list. We're waiting to hear officially if Antonio Gibson is in or out, so we will get to that at 11:30 as well as preview the rest of the NFL. We'll take a look at the Giants offense, what's left of it anyway, against this Commanders defense coming up at noon. It is what it is.
Great.
Our pick six at 12:15. We'll see. Anthony had a couple that he thought you were really going to like. So
I can't wait.
Six players / units that we think will have the biggest impact for the Commanders today and what will hopefully be a win. Grant Paulsen joins us from FedEx Field at 12:30. And then, of course, we'll pick it and get our key players coming up at 12:45. That's the rest of the show, but we start with our tale of the tape next with Logan Paulsen. I'm Craig Hoffman. It is the Take Command pregame show on a Burgundy and Gold game day. the Take Command pregame show on a Burgundy and Gold game day. We're live from Tap Sports Bar at MGM National Harbor with Logan Paulsen. I am Craig Hoffman. First of 2 divisional games in 5 days for the Commanders today against the New York Giants. Of course, they'll be at AT&T Stadium on Thanksgiving. You played in Dallas on Thanksgiving.
I have, yeah.
Because you were in the 2012 game.
Yep.
Maybe that could be a fun story time later in the show.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun.
Because we're not doing the show on Thursday.
We're not.
No,
I'm just kidding. I knew that.
You knew that one.
Yeah, I knew that.
That was unlike earlier when you actually didn't.
I don't know the rundown for the show very well.
But
I'm like a small child at Disneyland. I just hold your hand and you just walk me through it.
It is, by the way, pretty funny on the YouTube stream. There's some commentary on our chairs. People cannot believe that we are the same height. Logan's chair is lower than mine. Also, I'm not a tiny person. I'm only look like a tiny person next to Logan because he's 6'5" and played tight end for a decade in the NFL.
You also have a long back, though.
I do?
Yeah,
I got
long to torso, I think.
I don't think my legs are that short.
No, I'm
legitimately 6 feet tall. Right now, I'm like 6'2" because I terribly need a haircut.
Stop.
I got one tomorrow. What do you want?
I need to get a haircut. I'm bad at getting haircuts. I'm bad at scheduling my life. All right, are we talking about football or are we talking about haircuts?
I don't know. What's on the rundown, Logan?
I think we're going to talk about the Giants Commanders game.
Oh, okay. Good. Good detail there on what's in the rundown. 11:15 every week, we go into our Tale of the Tape.
Tale of Tape.
So we look back at a previous game through the X's and the O's and see what it can tell us about this one. And if we go back to the first matchup of these two teams, what was it that the Commanders struggled so terribly with offensively, and then how do they fix those issues today?
I mean, this is not going to be a long answer. It was execution. I thought EB came out offensively with a pretty solid game plan. It just they didn't execute it very well.
So, more specifically, what was that plan?
Sure, yeah. So, I think we talked about how to handle Wink Martindale's pressure in that first matchup. It's quick game. It's moving the pocket. It's max pros. It's taking your shots when you find them. And when you look at the go through and sequence the plays, that's what they were doing. They, incomplete passes, errors on pass protection, not passing off simple stunts, not getting protections targeted correctly, all those things. And everyone just kind of took their turn making a mistake. And then finally when they got to the second half, they found some type of offensive rhythm, but it kind of felt like it was too little too late for me. And then defensively, I think there was a very similar process too, in that, they executed generally very well outside of 2 explosive plays. And so, that's kind of been a thing for this defense is you execute pretty well outside of these 4 or 5 plays, and those 4 or 5 plays are the difference for you defensively. So, to me, offensively, can we protect Sam Howell? Number one. And so what falls under that bullet point, it's getting protections targeted, making sure our protection plan is comprehensive and well executed, and then making sure Sam Howell is comfortable with that protection plan. And in that protection plan, not only are we talking about the blocking surface, but we're talking about routes, providing solutions in terms of hot routes, quick game, sprints, rollouts, all those types of things in terms of changing the launch point to make sure they can't tee off. So all of those things are there. And I felt like they were, not all of that, but a lot of that was there in the first matchup. Screens, something that was kind of lacking in the first matchup. But let's get that stuff all called. Let's get it executed well, and I think we'll be okay. That's the thing. In the first matchup, it was all there. We just didn't execute it the way we needed to execute in order to win that football game.
So there's a lot of different things you can do to help protect a quarterback against a blitz-happy scheme, right? There's quick throws. There's moving the pocket. Obviously, you can run the football if that's something that you like to do. This team doesn't. Mm-hmm. But in terms of the order, you could spread teams out. You spread it out. It's easier to see the matchups. It's harder to bring blitzers. If you're in condensed formations, it's really easy to hide who's coming and who's not.
Can be, yep.
So how much does the order matter here in terms of presenting Sam Howell with some of these solutions? Like if you're EB, are you trying to move the pocket a bunch early? Are you trying to go spread a bunch early? Are you trying to hit him with an early screen and slow it down that way? Or does it not particularly matter in terms of setting it up as long as whatever you do first works?
I mean, I think I want my thing to do that. I want the thing to work.
Yeah, working is important. The execution piece, seems logical.
I think that's the thing that I've learned calling plays is it doesn't really matter what is on the board, what you've drawn up and what you feel like is the right thing. It's about what you feel is most executable. And I think that's the thing that I would say in this game. What is the thing you have the most confidence in? I don't care if the Giants know you're going to run it. What is the thing you trust the most? And so what I would say, based on what they've done, is some form of quick game. Spread them out, some form of quick game, right? That would be very, very high on my call sheet because it settles Sam in. I think it settles the offensive line in. It lets you kind of get a feel for what they want to do, and then kind of gets you settled in. Then now I can get into the more complicated stuff. Say, hey, come on to the sideline. This is what we did this is what he did on last third down. He has a tendency to kind of rinse and repeat in terms of blitzes on third down, or it reveals his plan on third down. This is what we're going to do. Now we can get into some more complicated protection looks. We can get our 6 and 7 man protections targeted correctly. But start with something that you feel, that you know, that the guys know, and they can get executed. Sam knows it. The receivers know it. They know all the adjustments to it. You can run it versus anything you want. Like Kyle, for example, was always pretty good at saying, hey, this is the run. This is our run. We've run this run since day one of training camp. It'll be our first run in this game. If they line up in a 6, this is what you're going to call. If a 9, this is what they're going to call. If they line up in some crazy stunt look, this is what you're going to do because you've run it. And right. I think having that play, that type of play at your disposal is extremely, extremely valuable. So that's what I would say. Whatever you feel the most confident in should be very heavy in your first 25.
I like that. Obviously, if you can get something going, it opens up the rest of it. The other thing that we talked about a little bit during the week on the Take Command podcast that I would like to see a little bit more of in this game, or maybe even a lot more of compared to the first Giants game specifically, and they've done this a little bit more the last couple of weeks, is a heavier use of the screen game.
I think so too. Yeah.
One thing that you can do against a blitz-happy team is invite that pressure and then weaponize the aggression against them. Because the more guys they bring, if you can just loft it over the top of them, well, now you got a bunch of defenders behind the play with the fast guy with the ball in his hands and hopefully some blockers in front. Now we'll see if Antonio Gibson, who's their best screen runner, is going to be available today. But B-Rob's pretty good at that.
You think so? You think he's the best screen runner? I mean, I think B-Rob's been the most productive guy this year.
I think AG's been pretty productive in those. I mean, he's gotten tripped up a couple times behind the line of scrimmage. He's got a lot more attempts at it. But I think AG does a good job of setting up runs and or setting up blocks in space, and then I think the success rate is high. Like, he hasn't necessarily busted a 50-yarder, but he has gotten them a fair amount of first downs. Like, you call a screen on 2nd and 6, he'll get you 8, and you get a first down out of it.
Yeah, I don't know. I think B-Rob's been a little bit better, honestly.
Okay.
In terms of, feeling him out. He's had a couple explosive plays against Denver. He had the slip screen against Philly. There's been more stuff. So I don't think you lose a lot there. I think you lose a little bit. To your point, you lose a little bit of the dynamic duo. It doesn't really matter who's in there because I don't know. I haven't seen Chris Rodriguez do it.
Yeah, I think he's been much more of a runner and a pass blocker.
So you lose the ability to kind of have both guys in there and finding those explosive matchups with both of them. But I do think that you don't lose a lot from B-Rob to Gibson from a screen standpoint. You do lose a lot from Gibson, I think, to Chris Rodriguez, and that's where maybe Gore comes in on that. But and another point to that, just to kind of layer this, is how comfortable are you running screens into different looks would be my thought here. Yeah. Because screens, as simple as they seemingly are, if you're getting a lot of line movement, it changes the rules and who gets out for the offensive line. So maybe you want something even simpler than that to start. You can get to it early, obviously. But once you kind of get a feel for what's going on, it's okay. Now, they're going to run this pressure with this stunt. Guys, you good with this? We've seen it. Okay, expect it on this next second down. Boom. Here we go. And just to kind of get them prepped for, because, again, the thing that makes Wink Martindale's defenses so challenging is they are a little bit game plan specific in terms of their opponents. So let's make sure we're all ready to kind of handle those opportunities, I think, when they come. So back to the original point. What's the simplest thing we do? Let's get a feel for what's happening in the game plan. So I would expect to see some sprints early. I would expect to see some quick game early. Just something basic, something that we execute at a high level, and then we can kind of say, okay, this is what they're doing. Now let's get into the next layer of the thing.
All right, when we get back here on the Take Command pregame show, we'll take a look around the NFL, some thoughts and predictions for each and every game on the slate. And then we will get we might actually even go a little bit longer on some of these and do some at 11:45, but continue to break down the game, obviously, as we move towards 1 o'clock. We will have official word on Antonio Gibson in the next 10 minutes or so, as the inactive list is due in 4 minutes. So we'll get you that update and more as we continue on the Take Command pregame show on a Burgundy and Gold game day. Take command pregame show on a Burgundy and Gold game day. Craig Hoffman, Logan Paulsen with you from Tap Sports Bar, MGM National Harbor. A quick look at the injury report brought to you by the Centers for Advanced Orthopedics. More physicians, more locations, more advanced care around one thing. You visit CFAortho.com. No Antonio Gibson today for the Commanders. He was doubtful, so that is basically if you list someone as doubtful and they wind up playing, the NFL is like, hey, what happened here? So you pretty much knew that. Tariq Castro-Fields, Alex Arma, Julian Good-Jones, Curtis Hodges, Mitchell Tinsley, and then James Smith-Williams. Arma and Smith-Williams, hamstring injuries. They're hoping that they can play next week. But seems unlikely 5 days from now. But we'll see. But that is the injury report. We'll talk more about the impact of some of that as we go. Also, let you know that we're with you for another 8 minutes or so here on the Team 980. We will continue through kickoff on 106.7 The Fan, but Syracuse, Maryland women's hoops coming up at 11:45 on the Team 980. So with that, Logan, let's quickly run through at least the 1 o'clock slate, and we can run through the rest of it. Steelers and Browns, Watson out for the year. Cleveland still favored by 2.5, though, at home over a Pittsburgh team that is 6-3 somehow, and the offense is starting to look a little better.
Yeah, well, in that early game this year, though, they lost by like a late forced fumble, right? TJ Watt, is that what happened in the first Browns game? So obviously close, evenly matched teams. I think that defense is outstanding for Cleveland. Man, that whole division has just gotten so banged up. Lamar Jackson's hurt, right? Deshaun Watson's hurt. And then obviously Burrow. So obviously this division that looked awesome is now they're going to just war of attrition.
Somehow Mike Tomlin's team will wind up on the top of it because they always do.
Crazy,
it's so annoying.
Crazy bit there. I like Cleveland, but I think I would take the team that actually has this functioning quarterback in the Steelers to win that game.
Your UCLA guy, though, is starting, DTR, Dorian Thompson-Robinson.
Yeah, he struggled in the first matchup, man. Bad. But, DTR, let's go.
Well, good weekend for UCLA. Beat the tar out of USC yesterday. Bears and Lions. Detroit 7.5-point favorites, but Justin Fields back for Chicago.
Yeah, I mean, Detroit might be my favorite team in the NFL. Maybe it's
don't disagree.
Close. I mean, obviously, I think there's better teams, but in terms of just process, playing good football, playing hard, Lions, I think they beat the brakes off the Bears.
7.5, not enough for Logan Paulsen.
Yeah.
Skipped one. Chargers and Packers. Chargers 3-point favorites at Lambeau. Here's the thing about the Chargers. I think they're a good football team, and they have lost to better football teams in close games.
Yeah.
Like, it's not like they have a bad loss on their schedule.
Right.
And they have won all the games you'd expect them to win. I think that continues today in Green Bay.
I think so, too. I think, we talk about Jordan Love all the time and kind of how he shows you something, then doesn't show you the next throw. Very inconsistent.
Yeah.
Don't have a lot of dynamic playmakers there. I think the defense in Green Bay is okay. I think the Chargers win. I think I'd probably win by 7, I would say.
All right, so that would be a cover for the Chargers on Logan's book. Raiders and Dolphins.
Kind of a good game.
I mean, I guess we're going to find out. It was interesting reading Diana Rossini's notebook this week. She kind of puts out a Saturday notebook, everything she's hearing around the league. And obviously everyone in Vegas is psyched that McDaniels is gone. They hated him there. But they also, the people that she talked to was like, this weekend might be a bit of a reality check from just a talent standpoint.
Yeah.
Like, this is going to be tough. Miami's awesome. They're favored by 13.5. So this could be a bit of a rude awakening for the Antonio Pierce era. Not that they won't have more fun than they would if they got their doors beaten off, their doors beaten down by a coach by Josh McDaniels. But at the end of the day, like, Miami's the better team here.
Oh, 100%. I do think that Oakland defense is better than people think. So it'll be really interesting to see how they handle this Miami offense, obviously, which puts up a ton of points against bad teams. And then also, I think, O'Connell is kind of an interesting story.
He's super interesting.
Bad, hasn't played good. Can he find his footing against this Dolphins defense, which is pretty good? They're pretty good. So I definitely think it's probably going to be a rude awakening, but I'm hoping for a competitive matchup, I guess is what I'm saying.
Yeah, one of the interesting things, too, is, like, Mike McDaniel is obviously one of the smartest, most innovative, creative coaches in the league. Like, what does he do with a guy like Max Crosby?
Yeah.
How do you block that
Just
up?
put him in a blender.
Yeah. How do you make his life difficult knowing he can wreck your game plan? Also, I will say this. There was a tremendous feature. I think it was Kent Babb. Someone at the Washington Post wrote a really good feature on McDaniel that's worth digging up. I think it was from earlier in the week. So worth definitely checking that out if you're interested in knowing more about the Dolphins coach, who obviously came through Washington here. Cowboys and Panthers. This is one where when we pick games on Fridays on the Hoffman Show, we go 1, 2, 3,
Cowboys,
Dallas, which was actually very funny this Friday. I was broadcasting at District E outside of Capital One Arena. And Anthony, for some reason, decided to go, how about them, give it a full how about them Cowboys. It's not like he's a secret Dallas fan. He's a Commanders fan.
Yeah.
But he did it, and the people at District E booed. And I was like, you're not even here. Like, you're in the studio in safety. You're going to get stuff thrown at me for hitting a how about them Cowboys. But, yeah, it does very much seem like Dallas should win. But, it's interesting. Kevin said earlier, Sheehan, when he was with us, kind of likes Panthers from a betting perspective.
I don't often disagree with Kevin. I disagree with him wholeheartedly. Dallas beats bad teams decisively. That's a fact. So I think they kind of run away with this. I think that's a 17 to 20 point win.
Obviously, we'll see. And then Dallas, we'll see them on Thursday in Dallas on Thanksgiving. Titans and Jags. Kind of an interesting one. Because you just don't know what to expect from the Jags week to week. I mean, they got absolutely destroyed by the 49ers last week. How do they bounce back against a Tennessee team that is very limited?
And, there's always the Levis storyline, too. I think, how's he doing? Derrick Henry, how productive can he be? That's one of the worst offensive lines in football. Jacksonville should be able to bounce back, but like you said, they are a little inconsistent. So,
Cardinals and Texans.
I'm kind of excited for this game.
I'm not even low-key excited. I'm high-key excited for this game. We'll be at FedEx, so it's kind of hard to watch other games while you're watching the game in front of you, unless you want to pull up Red Zone. Some people in the press box do that. I won't name any Grant Paulsen names that watch Red Zone in the press box.
And he'll give you score updates. He's awesome.
Grant's great. As opposed to Chris Russell, who's giving a score update on the game in front of you to the rest of the nation. Grant, 2 seats over from me in the press box, gives score updates from
but he's got to be carrying the game you want to carry, because he's got a very strong perspective about the game he thinks is important for the hour.
Yeah,
so usually it's Minnesota or somebody that he likes. Yeah. So you can't cover them all, I guess.
I hope he's a big CJ Stroud fan, because I want the Houston Arizona updates, because Arizona, a team that's been plucky and feisty and all those words all year long, now has talent at the quarterback position. Kyler Murray back last week looked pretty Kyler Murray-y.
Yeah. Yeah, Kyler Murray. Is that an adverb? Adjective? Whatever it is?
I don't know.
But so I agree. That's why I'm excited about it. Obviously, the Texans are playing really good football. Offensively, they're doing a great job. Defensively, they're doing a great job. To me, it's like they're riding high. They played some good teams.
I'm also scared of a letdown game for them.
Yes. So that's kind of what I'm worried about here. And then just to see Kyler Murray. And then I like the Cardinals. I enjoy watching their games because they are plucky and competitive.
With Houston, they've been able to do it in so many different ways, or not necessarily so many different ways, but so many different people. Obviously, C.J. Stroud being the main guy, but they've had Nico Collins out. They've had some other injuries at receiver.
Tank Dell's done a great job for them.
Yeah, coming up as a rookie. I think it's
Dalton Schultz. Jeez, sorry.
Yeah,
just had a Tourette's of a tight end there, but he's playing really good.
That's your favorite kind.
Yeah, absolutely.
Just shout out random tight
end.
And
Trey McBride for Arizona, 130 yards receiving last week. Tight end battle this week. Anyway, go ahead.
So, who do you think ultimately comes out with the win here?
Probably Texas, but I tell the Texans, but I think I don't know. I hope for some late game kind of magic here. Maybe late game field goal.
Yeah,
because I want Bobby to win too. I like Bobby Slowick, so I hope he wins the game. But I want it to be competitive.
What was he when you were here?
He was the defensive quality control, something like that. The assistant linebacker coach, very low on the totem pole. Awesome guy though, very nice.
I love when there's a coach that is has coached on both sides of the ball.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And Slowick, obviously the offensive coordinator in Houston now. All right. Let's take a break. Let's come back with the late game, and then we can spend a few extra minutes on the Monday Nighter, Eagles-Chiefs, the family reunion game / Super Bowl rematch. Here's that's what they're calling it on New Heights with the Kelsey brothers. So here's what we got on your radio boxes / your free Odyssey apps. On the Team 980, Maryland Syracuse Women's Hoops starts in about 5 minutes with the pregame show. 106.7 The Fan, you're sticking with us. So if you're listening on Team 980, flip on over if you want to stick with us. We're live on both stations' YouTube pages as well. So we'll be right back with more on the Take Command pregame show. It's the Take Command pregame show on a Burgundy and Gold game day. Craig Hoffman, Logan Paulsen with you on 106.7 The Fan. We're still live on the Team 980's YouTube page, as well as, of course, the Fan's YouTube page, and streaming live on the free Odyssey app. All right, Logan, let's take a look at the afternoon schedule of games today, the 4 o'clock games. You had a couple of decent ones. Really, the highlight of the weekend is on Monday night, but Buccaneers and 49ers, going into last week, you're like, I don't know. Looking ahead, this could be a low-key kind of fun game. Then San Francisco looks like San Francisco again, and it seems like this could be a blowout in the Bay.
Yeah, I mean, it feels like that way. I mean, but the Buccaneers have been fun to watch. They got some explosive playmakers, and obviously Mike Evans does his thing every single week, and Baker, kind of seems to have found a little bit of an offensive identity. They do some good stuff defensively. I think the 49ers are going to win this game. I think they're a better football team, but I could see them making it competitive. Maybe a one-score game, but I think it's one of those games where the 49ers kind of have it the whole time, and it's maybe a late score to cover or something like that.
So one of the interesting stories of the week in the NFL, Jets and Bills, you got actually interesting stories on both sides. But for the Bills, they obviously fired Ken Dorsey as their offensive coordinator. A lot of people think that was pretty unfair to Dorsey.
Yeah, I think so, too.
Their offensive statistics are certainly not bad.
Yeah.
But they're, I don't know, whatever reason, Sean McDermott, and McDermott almost said, we needed a scapegoat, and he's our scapegoat.
Did he really?
He kind of talked around it a little bit, but he's like, the more direct quote was, I couldn't walk back in that locker room with nothing having had changed. And so he felt like they needed to do something, and Dorsey's the guy. They have Joe Brady, who's got a good pedigree as a play caller in college. He was much more of a mixed bag in the NFL when he was with Carolina after that amazing year with Burrow at LSU. So he's the guy now, and he talked this week about how much Ken Dorsey's meant to him. But what can an OC do to get this offense on track to the extent that they don't think it's on track when a lot of their production numbers are actually pretty good?
Yeah, I think to me obviously there's something else going on there. You mentioned the scapegoat thing. That feels really right to me. Or his relationship with Josh Allen wasn't progressing, or he wasn't communicating effectively to Josh Allen. Those were the two things I thought when they made that firing. Because again, Josh Allen is one of the most talented players in the NFL, and you're going to go as far as he goes. So if you can kind of manage, again, some of that boom or bust element to his play, reel that in, I think that's something definitely that the new OC has to do with that group. But, and then the Jets, I think, always a tough matchup, especially given the first matchup they had this year. I think this will be a good football game, honestly. And given kind of the adversity that the Bills are facing, maybe they squeak out a win. I don't know.
Well, then, of course, you have the quarterback situation in New York, which is the Jets are trying to get the best production they can out of Zach Wilson and holding on for dear life until Aaron Rodgers theoretically gets back in a couple of weeks, which I still don't believe.
That's no way that happens.
He tore his Achilles.
Yeah,
and he's 40 years old.
No way. I know he's out there throwing the football, doing different stuff. No way. That would be an unprecedented rehab from that injury. Everyone was talking about Jordan Akers, Cam Akers coming back in 9 months. This is 4 months off the Achilles. I don't think there's any way that happens. But again, there's been crazier things that have happened, I suppose.
If we play the game, part of the decision is obviously going to be, can you actually make the playoffs?
Yeah.
Is it worth it to take that risk? The Jets winning today is almost necessary for that to happen.
Yeah.
They're going to have, if they lose today, less than a 1% chance, according to the analytics, best guess of doing it, which is I can see Aaron Rodgers being well, I'll prove to you, because that's how Aaron Rodgers is. But realistically, it's not worth the risk, and the organization would be very stupid to let him come back. So they need to get that right. And the thing is, if he doesn't come back, it almost feels like he's holding the organization hostage. Because I think in other circumstances, Nathaniel Hackett would be fired by now. He's not doing he's not doing a good job calling plays for that offense.
But also, I think Zach Wilson has just done such a poor. He's just bad at times. You know what I mean? And so it's you can't. Nathaniel Hackett can't make Zach Wilson good, I think, is the problem that you're running into.
That is also definitely part of it. But also, you can make Zach Wilson not Zach Wilson. And it almost feels like Rodgers, who's clearly taken a liking to Wilson, has been no, keep playing Zach. And it's Why not go to Trevor Siemian? Not like Trevor Siemian's going to save is going to be amazing.
But he's won games.
He has, and he's a better fit.
Yeah.
For like a great defense, you just need a caretaker quarterback. Trevor Siemian's better fit for that profile.
That is weird, though. If that's true, man, oh my gosh, that would be such a big swing by Aaron Rodgers.
Robert Saleh was basically like, I know, he was asked, like, why don't you do that? And he's like, I'm going to plead the fifth. And it's like, you're the head coach.
I know.
It's telling you that he's not calling the shots. The Jets, same old Jets, dysfunctional as ever. Seahawks and Rams, Matt Stafford back for L.A., which has them as 2-point favorites over Seattle at home.
That's pretty wild, actually. I think the Seahawks are a good football team, and obviously the record indicates that. I know Matt Stafford's good, and they are really, really good when he's playing quarterback, but they just haven't been scoring a lot of points. So I think that the Seahawks will just score more points, and they'll play better defense. It'll be a good game. It'll be close. It's in the division, but I think the Seahawks win that game.
Yeah, I like the Rams with Stafford. I just have zero trust in Stafford to continue to stay healthy and be productive on a regular basis.
Yeah, no, I totally agree.
Which is a kind of an existential problem for the Rams moving forward as they figure out what to do. The Carson Wentz experiment having come to an end after 1 week. Vikings and Broncos. Suddenly a good game.
Yeah, really good game.
The Broncos have been cooking as of late. Russ, by the way, on the year. 18-4. 18 touchdowns, 4 picks.
Dude.
They have found Sean Payton, to his credit. It was bumpy. It was ugly. It was kind of embarrassing. Some of the press, talking back and forth. It's like, are we, what kind of unprofessional bickering are we doing here? But they have found the right temperature to let Russ cook at.
Yeah.
He's got 18 touchdowns to 4 picks. They are suddenly 4-5. And by the way, on the other side is the maybe even more amazing story in the NFL. Vikings started 0-4. They got back to 4-4. They lose Cousins. Dobbs comes in, wins 2 in a row. Craziness in Minnesota.
Yeah.
Can they sustain it on the road at Denver?
I think no. I think Denver probably wins this game. As much as I'm stoked on Josh Dobbs and what he's done, and the offensive coordinator there is a guy that I have a ton of respect for. I think the Broncos are finding something here, and it's kind of it's a scary proposition. If Sean Payton calls the game he can, the defense plays the way they played over the last couple of weeks, I think they're kind of becoming that dark horse candidate to make some waves here against teams that aren't those elite top-level teams in the NFL.
There's going to be some, 500-ish team that makes the playoffs in each conference. That's the nature of it now with 7 playoff teams. The Broncos trying to be that team. The Vikings obviously trying to be that team on the NFC side of things. Then, last but not least, you got Monday Night Football. Eagles and Chiefs. Yeah. They're both coming off a bye. They're both top of their conference. They both have a dude named Kelsey. They both played in the Super Bowl last year. This is a dream matchup on Monday Night Football for the league, for ESPN, for everybody. All of us that are football fans that want to see good ball in these primetime windows. I mean, what more could you possibly ask for?
You couldn't ask for much more, and I'm really excited to see, because Philly's in the division. I don't root for them, but I follow them more closely for sure. What their plan is versus this Kansas City defense, because for whatever reason, Kansas City's kind of become a defensive juggernaut, and their offense is struggling a little bit. So what's the plan for the defense? Obviously, the Kansas City Chiefs don't stop the run, as well as some other teams in the league. So does that allow the Eagles to kind of get back on track running the football? Where's Jalen Hurts' health at? All those things will be at the forefront. And then there's something about the Eagles and the confidence that they play with. When they go for 4th downs, their confidence that they're going to get them. They just seem like they believe wholeheartedly in everything that's going on there, especially from the offensive side of the football. And then the Chiefs, this seems like a game they can get right against this Philadelphia Eagles defense, which is, I think, kind of before our eyes, aging into kind of that, what's the word I'm looking for? Aging into that bucket where we need to upgrade all of a sudden at a whole bunch of different spots.
And they've got some young guys in reserve that perhaps can take on bigger roles, and maybe they're not quite ready yet, or maybe they are, and we're about to find out. But it is wild how the Chiefs have become this defense-first team. That's why they are 7-2. This game's at Arrowhead. The atmosphere is going to be absolutely bonkers. You ever play primetime at Arrowhead? No,
I played. This is a great story. I played in a preseason game, and it was so loud. It was like the first preseason game of the year. It was so loud we had to go on the silent count in a preseason game.
That's crazy. I've actually been on the sidelines for a Monday Night Football at Arrowhead. Really? Washington played there. It was when Alex Smith went. Or actually, no. Was Alex still with the Chiefs? Yeah, Alex was still with the Chiefs. Little did we know he was about to be in Washington the next year. So it was 2017, I guess. And that I intentionally stayed on the sideline as long as I was literally allowed to do before the game, and was able to feel that pregame atmosphere from the sideline. Incredible atmosphere. Andy Reid, by the way, also notoriously excellent off the bye. He when he was with the Eagles back in the day, basically never lost coming off the bye. So that is something to keep an eye on, as well as both of these teams are coming off the bye. Can during that bye week, Reid and his offensive staff figure out how to get Mahomes, Kelsey, and really it's everyone else going. We'll find out tomorrow night. When we get back, we go back to the Commanders and Giants. We'll be just an hour from kickoff at FedEx Field. We'll take a look at the Commanders' defense against a Giants offense that is obviously very banged up, playing an emergency quarterback. But where do the threats lie, and can they use this to propel them into a much better back half of the season? Can this be a springboard game? We'll talk about that next. With Logan Paulsen, I'm Craig Hoffman. It's the Take Command pregame show on a Burgundy and Gold game day. Take Command pregame show on a burgundy and gold game day. We're live from Tap Sports Bar, MGM National Harbor, where the bar is starting to fill up. This is my favorite hour of the show, Logan. As the room starts to build here at Tap, you get the energy, and you just know games are coming. All the TVs have the pregame shows on, so you see players starting to warm up. This is the time for football. So we are excited to get ready, spending this final hour with you, previewing Commanders and Giants. This is the Take Command pregame show. I am Craig Hoffman. He is Logan Paulsen with you until 1 o'clock when we hand it off today to Denton Day and Toby Altizer. Toby in for Linnell today on the Burgundy and Gold Game Day live show. So looking forward to that as well. All right, let's take a look at the Washington defense against a Giants offense that has a couple of key guys that are dangerous. Jalen Hyatt proved that he is dangerous in the last matchup. Obviously, Saquon Barkley, everyone knows about. The good news for Washington, Darren Waller is out today. And, of course, everything comes back to the fact that they're playing, the Giants are, with an emergency, with third-string quarterback in Tommy DeVito. If you are Jack Del Rio and you get up in front of the unit this week, what are you preaching to make sure that you can have what should be a dominant performance based off the talent gap?
Well, I think it just goes back to kind of something that we've been talking about quite a bit, and it's this idea of like doing your job defensively. Just do what we're asking you to do. And I think the thing that I was thinking about this earlier this week, I think after our second podcast, honestly, I would have brought it up there, is like as a coach, are you allowing the players an opportunity to effectively do their job? Are you speaking to skill sets? Are you maximizing skill sets? So I think that's one thing that I would have to say if I was Jack this week. I would say do what we're asking you to do, trust us, right? But then I have to kind of look internally and say, am I asking these guys to do something that they physically are not capable of doing? Mm-hmm. And I think that's something that, like when Ron says, we should have got more pass rush help. It would be nice if Montez Sweat's here. Obviously, Montez is a great football player. You want him on your team. But what can we do to maximize the guys we have in that room right now? What can we do to maximize the linebackers and the secondary? And so looking at this, I think if I'm Jack, I kind of say to myself, we're going to try to find ways to bring to bring pressure, to maximize the pressure we're bringing. And whether that's blitzing, whether that's stunts, whether that's four-man simulated pressures, zone pressures, man pressures, whatever that looks like, I want a package of that I feel really, really confident in, and I can adjust to what they're doing. I want to make sure that we're matching up effectively with Saquon Barkley because they use him as a receiver. I don't really care so much about him as a runner. Obviously, he's going to get what he's going to get as a runner. They're going to pound their head against the wall. But we've got good run-stuffing players. John Ridgeway, Big Phil's done a decent job in that capacity when he's been in there.
And Saquon's banged up a little bit, too, so he's not at his absolute best.
And then Jamin's done a good job. Cam's done a good job.
That's where Mayo's great.
Excellent, right? Yeah. So he's going to get that. But I think as a pass catcher, like there's one play in particular, I talked about it on Coach's Show, which is on the Commanders YouTube channel, is this idea that if you get him the ball in space, it could be devastating. There was a play against the New York Jets, I think I mentioned this on the podcast, is where he's running a little choice route. And the Jets are running a zone pressure, so they're dropping the left defensive or the right defensive end out as you're looking at the offense, and they're overloading the left side of the New York Giants protection. Saquon's in a one-on-one with Huff, who's a defensive end. He breaks across his face. He's wide open in the midfield. The ball gets batted down, but that's a touchdown. You know what I mean? Yeah. That is a touchdown. So making sure you understand where their most explosive playmaker is and making sure that matchup is good. Making sure you have a good – I don't care if it's Cam Crow. That's who's going to hurt you offensively, right? So if Cam Crow's got to play linebacker this week and follow him all over the formation like he does with Christian McCaffrey, that's what we got to do. I understand Jamin can do a fine job at that, but when there's one element of that offense that is really terrifying, let's take it away. Let's take it away.
I think that's smart.
And so that's what I would do this week. I would say, Cam, you're going to match up with him. I think outside there's nobody that really scares you. Hyatt is in, but he's coming off the concussion, correct?
Yes.
So I think St. Juste did a pretty good job with him last time. Obviously there was a couple explosive plays, but as a play caller I can say, hey, I can help you out here. Let's get into more quarters. And I'm not saying we're going to abort man here, right? And I think also this is another great point. Forbes last week in his 5 snaps, I thought looked like a different dude a little bit. I thought he's getting more confident coming off the New England game. So that's a matchup I like. I like St. Juste versus pretty much anybody. He will have a hard time in certain situations, but he's a good football player, right? Forbes is a good football player. Fuller's been excellent in terms of consistency. So if you get those two guys on the outside, Forbes and Fuller, and then St. Juice in the slot, I think you feel good about all those matchups.
Yeah, I actually wonder today if they're in some more Buffalo nickel looks and some more nickel looks. Like, who are the corners on the outside? Because Forbes was the guy last week. Like, they were ready to put him on DK
and I think this week
make that transition. Where, like, when we look at the snap counts at the end of the week, who are the two corners that have 100%?
I really think it's going to be Forbes this week. I really do.
Yeah.
I think it's going to be Forbes and St. Juice in the slot. And I think St. Juice, when he was playing in the slot, only had to happen a couple times this year, but was excellent there, right? And, he'll match up with Wan'Dale Robinson, who's very, very dynamic as a slot receiver, but he's shown an ability to handle that to a certain extent, right?
Yeah.
And as long as he keeps everything in front of him and there's no big plays, that's okay. Because I don't think that that Tommy DeVito has the ability to beat you down in and down out. He can beat you one every 8 plays, and as long as that play isn't a huge explosive play, I think you're okay. So
Right.
I think that's ultimately what you're trying to do, is just take away the most dangerous weapons and bring a little bit of pressure creatively, like we're talking about, to maximize what you're doing defensively. And then once you've established that game plan, do what you're supposed to do. Be where you're supposed to play with the correct leverages.
So I agree with your strategy. What I struggle with in terms of confidence is Jack Del Rio employing it. They have been kind of stubborn, if you want to use that word, with what they do. Obviously, it changes a little bit with Chase and Montez gone. I think there was a lot of pressure to rush those guys.
Yeah.
Also, they weren't great if they had to drop out in coverage. So I do think that's going to be an interesting thing is like, okay, those guys are gone. I feel like Jack's called 2 better games the last couple of weeks. How much are you willing to skew from what you initially planned on being this year to this current version against this Giants team? Like, how much shiftiness do you have in your game plan? Are you comfortable going maybe a little farther outside your comfort zone than you previously thought? So that is one element. There is also the do your job element of it, and this is where I ask you how big of a loss James Smith-Williams is.
Yeah.
Now, a lot of people are going like, wait, really? Like, he's James Smith-Williams.
He does his job, though.
James is maybe the best do your job guy on that line.
Yeah.
And the results are amazingly consistent.
Yep.
He's where he's supposed to be against the run. He generates somewhere between 2 and 4 pressures per game, and every couple of weeks that turns into a sack.
Correct.
He doesn't get beat on boot actions and keepers and things like that. He keeps the edge. And so that, if he was there then opposite of Montez, like, that's actually the ideal formula.
Yeah.
If Casey was a little bit more dynamic, Casey's a good football player, but again, like, you'd like to have one really good edge, one do-your-job edge, and then those 2 behemoths in the middle. But I do wonder, like, without having James there on a day where discipline is really important, because a lack of discipline is really the only way the Giants can generate what they need to generate, how big of a loss is it, and who gets those snaps, right? F.A. Obata is a guy that does freelance quite a bit.
Yep.
Do you say, KJ Henry, hey, today's your day, like, go do your job, be solid, be the 5th-round pick we drafted you to be?
Yeah.
And that's going to be an interesting thing. Josh Pryor, by the way, also up today. A guy that has a little bit of pass rush juice, as we saw in the preseason, but there's a reason that he was behind everybody else and sitting on the practice squad most of the year.
Yeah, and I think that's a great point. I think you undervalue guys like that. I think one of the things, like, even when everyone was here and, like, Casey was getting 4 sacks, he had 4 sacks. He was, like, third on the team in sacks. It's because he's just doing what he's supposed to do. Same thing with James. Like, both those guys kind of fall into that bucket. And like you said, it's nice when you have a dynamic guy that's creating,
you need playmakers, but you also need guys that just set other guys up to be playmakers.
Right. And so you said, like, James has between 2 and 4 pressures a game. Montez is a guy who's like 7 and 9, and like that's a much different number in terms of consistent pressure. But I think, to your point, if I'm Jack this week especially, like, I might go with one of the young guys over FA on 1st and 2nd down. And the reason I would do that is just because he's going to provide a consistent. I know what he's going to do. If I can get that communicated to him, like, you will play if you do what you're supposed to do. Because F.A., like you said, does a little freelancing. I want F.A. to play on 3rd down. I think he's a very good pass rusher on 3rd down. Bring him in there. He understands. He's got good power. He's a big guy, good feel for the pocket, right? Let him do that. But on 1st, 2nd down, I want someone who's going to fit the run correctly, put the linebackers in good spots to be successful, put the nickels in good spot to be successful. So I would not be surprised today if it's Andre Jones or KJ Henry or whoever. Like, put your person in there. Like, I've been a guy who's wanted Abdul Anderson to get that kind of more that big end kind of spot. I don't even think he's up, but that just speaks to my mindset, I think is what I'm saying. It's getting someone who's going to be in there, going to do what they're supposed to do, and get you to third down, get you to that opportunity, that right to rush the passer, then put F.A. out there, let him work. Because I do think then F.A., he brings some of that high-level pass rush ability.
Yeah, for sure.
It's just about making sure he doesn't hurt you getting to that situation, if that makes sense.
Right. It doesn't really work if you're in 3rd and 2 even, where the whole playbook's open. Like, you need the solidity to get to 3rd and 8, and now it's time to tee off.
Now go get it, F.A. And I think, to Casey's credit, like, him and John seem to be working really well together, and I think it's maximized John. So if you get, another 10% increase in John because Casey's doing what he's supposed to do, maybe that picks up some of that pass rush pressure in addition to some of the pressure that Jack plans on bringing, I'm sure, today.
That is something I want to see today is, like, John's played better. The production hasn't come yet in terms of explosive, game-changing plays.
Right.
Is it the week that it clicks finally for him and Daron Payne? We shall see coming up starting about 48 minutes from right now. On Fridays on the Hoffman Show on the Team 980, we have our Pick 6 at 6 o'clock. Anthony Haney, my producer, and I, we pick 6 players that we think will have the biggest impact on a Commanders victory on Sunday. We take that 6, we run it past Logan here on a Sunday on the Take Command pregame show, and we'll do that next with Logan. I'm Craig. It is the Take Command pregame show on a Burgundy and Gold game day. We'll talk to Grant Paulsen coming up at 12:30 live from FedEx Field. Craig Hoffman, Logan Paulsen with you here on the Take Command pregame show. The Take Command postgame show will be live on YouTube approximately 90 minutes after the final whistle. I will go down to the postgame locker room. I'll go to Ron Rivera's press conference. Sam Howell. Sam's a slow presser guy.
Slow presser guy.
Loves to. I hope they win today because I think he'll be faster. He really takes the losses hard. He sits in his locker a while. There's a lot of thinking, a lot of contemplating, and then he eventually goes to his press conference. But regardless, win or loss, I'll be there. Whenever Sam goes, I'll be there to ask him a question or two. And
what are you going to
ask
him today?
I don't know, Logan.
Do
I don't predetermine.
I mean, but you got like a category, right? Or you just kind of
watch the game and then I ask what I want to know.
All right.
I rely on my intuition.
What did you ask last time? You asked a good question last time.
I think I asked about trust last time.
Yeah.
I asked him about the trust development of his receivers and all of that kind of stuff.
Because I get to listen on my post game. I listen to all the questions. And I'm like, oh, there's Craig asking a question.
Yeah.
Good job.
I try to. So we'll see what kind of questions are to be asked about a win or a loss afterwards, and then Logan and I will talk about it on YouTube at the Team 980 and at 106.7 The Fan. Perhaps here in the background, starting to pick up here at Tap Sports Bar, MGM National Harbor, as we head towards the 1 o'clock starts. And every Friday on the Hoffman Show, which you can listen to 4 to 7 on the Team 980, the free Odyssey app, or watch on the Team 980's YouTube page, we do our Pick Six. Anthony Haney, my producer, and I, we take 6 players, or sometimes coaches sneak in, and perhaps there's one today, where we think they're going to have the biggest impact, if they play well and a Commanders win. If they don't do their job very well on that particular day, on a Commander, or the reason why the Commanders may come up short. So I had the number 1 pick this week, Logan.
I love this.
My first pick was Tyler Larsen. Obviously, this is the game, the Giants, the matchup where Nick Gates essentially got himself benched because of the center's performance last time. It is a tough mental day where you have a lot of stuff going on with the blitz packages from Wink Martindale. It is a tough physical day because Dexter Lawrence lines up right on you helmet to helmet, and then you have to try and block him. So Tyler Larsen, my number 1 pick this week.
And I would emphatically agree. I think if he's going to have a good game, he needs to have a good game for the offense to be functional today. So can he get the stuff called correctly like you alluded to? And can he just win his one-on-one? And he has the toughest one-on-one you're going to get probably for a couple of weeks here. So
I mean, for a center, there aren't many tougher ones in the NFL.
This is the toughest one.
Yeah.
For a center, if you just want pure center matchup, I'm just saying this might be he's top 5 defensive player in the NFL at the moment. So it's a tough matchup at any level. So definitely Tyler Larsen, big deal, huge deal. Love that as the first pick in your pick 6s here.
All right, Eric Bieniemy was Anthony's first pick, which I hate and I think you love. I just hate when you pick the coordinator because, we never pick Sam Howell, or we rarely pick Sam Howell because it's so blatantly obvious. There's not a game where it's like, it doesn't really matter what the coordinator can do. But I do feel like he does have a bit of an outsized impact in this one because of the distinctive nature. And as Anthony said on Friday, he got outcoached the first time around. Wink Martindale was able to have a dominant day with that defense.
I don't know if he got outcoached.
They scored 7 points.
But he got out. I will say because to me, when you watch the film, and maybe this is the player bias, it's the execution of the plan was very, very poor. So, again, is that coaching in the week? But in terms of game plan, I didn't think it was as bad as the 7 points. And I know people are like, oh, my gosh, Logan, you're always making excuses. I like to watch film. This is my analytical response to that, watching of film. They ran quick game. They ran 7-man pros. They ran sprints. They did all this stuff. They did not execute it at the level needed.
The offensive line was a lot of the sacks, as we talked about, a lot of the sacks previous to that were quarterback issues. That was a bad O-line day.
Yes, and so I'd say that, I think Eric Bieniemy will play a huge part. And it's how do you maximize Tyler Larsen? How do you put him in the best position to be successful? How do you maximize Sam Howell? You're the offensive coordinator. That's your job. Finding those matchups is so, so critical. So, I think he's going to have a huge impact today. Obviously, to your point, I hate it because it's obvious, Jack Del Rio, all these guys. They're the coordinators. They are the most important persons on game day, probably. I would say, and maybe outside the quarterback. They are responsible for coaching, installing, and establishing the game plan. So obviously he's going to have a big deal today.
Yeah. My second pick, our number 3 in our pick 6, Jahan Dotson. Adoree Jackson is out in this game. Deonte Banks is going to spend most of his time over Terry McLaurin. which means Jahan should have a pretty darn good matchup.
I hope so, man.
And I think, obviously, he wants to have a huge bounce back after last week. 0 catches, 2 targets.
Then a drop, right?
Yeah, had a tough, but, a drop. Like, he's got to get going. This is a guy who was a first-round pick last year. They're relying on him to be an explosive part of this offense. And I think one of the interesting stats that I stumbled across this week in doing all the prep and the research for the shows is the longest play to a wide receiver this year for the Commanders is 37 yards.
Is that Jahan touchdown?
No, it's the Curtis Samuel slot fade against Buffalo.
Oh, yeah, I got you.
So,
Yep.
They have not had a guy just take a ball 40 yards, nevertheless 50, 60, or gotten a big shot over the top, which is crazy because they have a bunch of dudes who run 4.3s and a quarterback with a cannon, and they have not been able to hit a big one. And I think Jahan maybe could be a candidate to get one of those big ones today. Can you finish? Can you track the ball? Can you slip a tackle on a slant? Whatever it is, you have a good matchup today, Jahan Dotson. Let's go get it.
Yeah, and he's a guy, man, that I've disappointed is probably the wrong word. I've just been surprised maybe at about his usage and his production, because he was a guy that in training camp looked awesome. When he was healthy last year looked awesome, and just has had like a little bit of a regression. So this seems like a good opportunity for him to get back on track, and I agree. Terry's going to draw the tougher matchup. I think Terry's going to win that matchup. But
I do too. I thought about putting Terry here instead.
Both those guys I think would be good fits here. But one of them needs to kind of have a big day and needs to definitively win. Quite frankly, in the last matchup, Jahan did a good job creating separation. But I will say the one thing that we've been pretty consistently critical of him on is, can you be more physical at the top of your route? Can you be more physical at creating that extra little bit of separation that Terry does such a great job of? So, in today, I totally agree. I'd love to see Jahan pop off for a big day. So you had 1 and 3, right?
I did.
This list? Yeah, man. I mean, you guys having a tough day, Anthony. Tough pick sixes for him. Is he still listening?
I don't know. I don't know if he's still got the YouTube stream up. He did check in with us earlier in the show. I was honestly surprised because he's off the next couple of days, so he's just going to have to take his beating when he gets back. Or we can call him and just be like, hey, Anthony, your list.
Rough.
Quan Martin is his next pick. Quan's a guy that, is a pretty good blitzer, and they've started to use him more in that role. He get matchup on Saquon a little bit. Yeah. He's also played a little bit more in the post. They need that cap on the top of the big plays. So Quan Martin was Anthony's next pick.
Yeah, I mean, he's only been playing between 10 and 15 snaps the past couple of games, so not a huge impact. To me, a guy like Forbes would be here. I would put Forbes in here, or St. Just. Guys that are Cam Curl, like we talked about, guys that I think are going to play more snaps and have much more a larger impact on the game. Like, I really want to see the Forbes we saw against the New England Patriots, because if he plays like that and he can play that outside spot like we talked about, I think that just elevates the whole secondary of the defense. If he can be that guy, and in these matchups, it doesn't seem like there's anybody that would pose the same physical issues that A.J. Brown would. And again, it's only 5 snaps, but watching him against DK Metcalf, I felt like he had a really good plan for the size of DK. So, again, I hope he has a good game. I
hope he starts to play more too.
Yeah,
one thing that they've done with Forbes is the plan seem to increase his snaps after that New England game and start to be like, all right, you're a starter now, you're a first round pick, let's go. And you kind of wonder if that's coming for Quan as well. How do they use him today? Could be a good test case against the Giants offense where you don't feel like you're going to be super exposed, but I know coaches don't really think like that, so we'll see.
Right.
Benjamin St. Just was my final pick, number 5 in our pick 6. A lot of the big plays have come on him. He's been in a good position. We've talked about it ad nauseum. They need a good day from him where he doesn't give up a big one. And I think there's also potentially an opportunity to get a turnover today.
Yeah.
He is just not a ball skills guy.
Yeah.
His only pick is when Desmond Ridder threw him an absolute gift.
Yep.
Can you go make a play today, Benjamin St. Just?
Yep. No, I agree. And I think, again, it kind of goes with the Forbes Fuller thing. If you're in the slot, can you fit runs correctly? Can you be aware of where the quarterback is when he's scrambling? You did a great job of that in the first Philly matchup where you played in the slot, a couple tackles on Jalen Hurts. So, obviously, I think whatever capacity he's in today, whether it's in the nickel or whether it's outside, he's going to have a huge game in terms of impact on the outcome. Because in the last Giants game, he had more PBU. He had 7 PBUs in one game, which is unheard of, right? So he did a good job, but also gave up a couple explosives. So where does he fall? Is this the super productive Benjamin St. Just, or is this the guy that's a little unsettled, a little nervous? I think it's going to be the former in that conversation as opposed to the latter, and I think he has a big day. And I think whatever his impact on the game will be big because
Yes.
it is big either way, right? Because he's a starting corner for the team.
And that is the nature of the pick six. Last but not least, and quickly, because we do need to get to Grant Paulsen here in a few moments, Jamin Davis was the last pick. And I like this pick from Anthony, and it was someone I was thinking about over St. Just even. If Waller was playing, I definitely would have picked Jamin, but he probably winds up getting some of the Saquon Barkley pass coverage reps.
Agree.
So can he be effective in those? Can he be effective as a blitzer? His impact always felt on the game. All right, when we get back, we will check in at FedEx Field with Grant Paulsen, set the scene, not only in the parking lots and in the stadium, but last time we checked in with Grant for a home game, Chris Russell had spilled nachos on my seat. We will make sure that my seat next to them in the press box, waiting on me when I get to FedEx Field in half an hour, is nacho free. GP with us next here on 106.7 The Fan. This is the Take Command pregame show. Take Command pregame show on a burgundy and gold game day. Craig Hoffman, Logan Paulsen with you, and we go out to FedEx Field now, where we check in not only on kind of the scene set and all of that kind of stuff in terms of what's going on in the parking lots, how's the stadium look early,
your seat,
but yeah, most importantly, Grant Paulsen, has Chris Russell done anything crazy with my seat in the press box?
No, not yet. But again, last week, right when I hung up, all hell broke loose.
Yeah.
So far, so good. He's eyeing me right now. Great to say.
There's no radio show happening before the game.
Hang on one second. They want to know, Rini, are you going to spill anything on his chair today?
Hello, Craig. Hello, Logan.
Hey,
there he is.
I'm just glad I don't have to listen to this portion of the pregame show. I only get to hear it through Grant's ears. But no, I have not spilled anything yet.
All I asked was if you had spilled anything on my chair. Is my chair safe? That's all I really want to know.
I can make sure that I just go slather some nacho cheese sauce on there if you want.
No, actually, the antithesis of that is what we're going for.
Okay.
Have a nice day, boys.
All right. Bye, Chris. The funny thing.
I want an update.
I was saying the funny thing about that, Logan and Grant, is he gets he sounds salty and offended, like he's not the one who did it.
I mean, he probably doesn't appreciate you talking about his mistake.
Then he shouldn't have spilled stuff on my chair.
You make mistakes. Everyone makes mistakes. The only one who doesn't make mistakes is Grant Paulsen, really.
No, here's the deal, Logie. We all do. You're right. When you're majoring in that endeavor, it gets talked about.
Yeah.
Right. We could talk about what you major in. It's what you minor in that we'll leave outside of the conversation.
Right.
Yeah. So there's that. All right. Grant, how much fear do you have of this Giants team that we know is not very good at this point in their progression, but seems to have the Commanders' number over the last couple of years, no matter how good or bad they are?
Yeah, I have zero fear. No fears whatsoever. For a couple of reasons. I mean, I kid a little bit, but number one, I'm sitting here very comfortably, and I think whatever happens today is going to be a really important exercise, right? If this team goes out and wins handily like they should, it's going to be indicative of the fact that they handled their business. They beat a team that's inferior to them. There's no business that they wouldn't. There's no reason not to. If they don't, then we also get a lot of really important information that's necessary here. They've only got 3 home games left. We're entering the stretch run with Thanksgiving around the corner. Evaluations are being made. And while the Bears loss is going to be tough to overcome, I think, for people in the building, that the first Giants loss is going to be really disappointing when you look back at the end of the year. Losing today to a Tommy DeVito-led Giants team on the road, they'd have 3 wins, 2 of them against you, in a year in which things have just completely come apart at the seams. I would say that could be a death sentence for some important people that are trying to keep their jobs.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't think any of us are too worried about the offense. I'm worried about the Giants' defense kind of making plays. What are your thoughts on that group? And I think despite kind of their poor numbers over the last couple of weeks, they are a defense that presents a lot of problems for this Commanders' offense.
Well, they definitely do. They got really good players. I mean, remember, the first time these teams met was only about a month ago, and the Giants' defense ate Washington's offense at lunch. I thought Wink Martindale in that game destroyed Eric Bieniemy. And since then, my opinion of Bieniemy has changed considerably. I really like what they've done over the last 3 games, and I feel really good about him and Howell and where they're at. But I cannot wait for this game to just see what type of adjustments Bieniemy makes, because I thought that was the worst performance he had as a planner, as a play caller, as a designer. Reacting, and in that case, not reacting to things that weren't working. I came away from that game completely disappointed, really, really frustrated with kind of where he was as a coordinator. And since then, he's basically taken 3 exams and gotten a 100 3 times as far as I'm concerned. So I feel a lot better, but to me, this is the equivalent, Logie, of this is your second time through the league as a pitcher, or your second time facing a good lineup. They've faced coordinator who had you solved. Your Rubik's Cube, he cracked the code, right? And now you get another chance at him. And this is going to tell me a lot about Bieniemy, the plan, and what he was able to do to adjust.
Grant Paulsen's with us, of course. Grant and Danny, 106.7 The Fan, weekday afternoons. What would you like to see today? Like, we've talked about a bunch of different options in terms of getting the ball out of Sam's hands quickly, moving the pocket, the screen game, the run game. Like, there's so many different ways to try to protect your quarterback beyond just changing the actual protections and sliding the line or whatever. Is there anything in particular that you would like to see today from EB and then executed by this offense?
Yeah, a couple of things. I mean, I guess most notably, I think there's one guy specifically on this defense who's a star and a game record, and that's Dexter Lawrence up front. And I want to see that you designed a plan to not allow him to beat you. Like, I think that's what coordinating's about, right? We talk about Bill Belichick all the time, and what made him great as a defensive mind was he would take whatever you do best away, and now you're dealing with your B and your C plans. Well, I want to see that the enemy came up with a plan to negate what the Giants are going to do on the interior, helping Chris Paul, helping your big three in the middle, essentially, avoid Dexter Lawrence ending drives and crippling this offense. Secondly, have a plan for blitzing. I mean, Wink Martindale was drawing them up from the parking lot last time, and they had absolutely no answer. So I want to see whether it's keeping tight ends in or some of the things that they're going to do. Have an ability to make up for that. And then the last thing I'll say, and this is more of a broad thing for me, but it's just important to me, big picture. I want to see a emphasis on getting the ball to your best players. I want to see a heavy target share for McLaurin. I want to see Dotson, who was catchless last week with just 2 targets. They came late. It's pretty clear to me that when he doesn't get involved early, he's a different guy, and it just isn't as generally capable when you go to him late in the game. It seems like he's not locked in. So I want to see those guys in the mix early with some quick passes out wide, get the ball in their hands, get them into the flow of the game, because sometimes they just allow Sam to kind of take what's there and involve them when they get to it. And next thing you know, it's the third quarter, and they've combined for 3 catches and 20 yards, and that should never be the case to me.
Another aspect of the game that I think is interesting, and a lot of fans have been calling for more, and I think I know your answer on this, is like, what is Brian Robinson's involvement in the run game, Chris Rodriguez's involvement in the run game? What do you expect from that position group today in conjunction with the offensive line?
Yeah, I think Brian Robinson's going to run 15 or more times today for just the third. It would be the 4th time this season, I guess, right? He did it in weeks 1 and week 2, and just against New England 2 weeks ago was the only other time he's had 15 or more carries. My guess is what you're going to see is typical first half where the enemy comes out, they move the football, they throw it. I think they'll be a little more balanced with the run game than they were at New York against the Giants, especially if they're getting the heavy load of blitzes in the early going. But I think they're going to run the ball a ton in the second half because, not to spoil my prediction here, but I think they're going to have a lead. I think they're going to be up comfortably for much of the game. And Bieniemy's plan has kind of always been throw to take the lead, run to put the game away. And it's frankly, I love it, right? You throw to win and you kind of run to ice it, right? You throw to get the lead, I guess I should say, to score, and then you run to win. So I think when they have a lead in the second half, they're going to go heavily to Robinson. You'll see Rodriguez get some of those touches Gibson would get. I bet those 2 guys combined, I would take the over 20 carries for them collectively. I think Robinson probably gets 15 or 16, and Rodriguez probably gets 5 or 6.
No, I think that probably would certainly be smart and very much ideal for today. Let's flush out that prediction, GP. Who you got?
I got the Commanders. I think it's going to be a 24-10, maybe a 27-13 kind of game. I don't know if there's such a thing right now for this organization as a lapper where they just win going away and everyone gets to cut up on the sideline. It's been since Thanksgiving against the Cowboys in Ron's first season in a 41-16 game against the backup quarterback for Dallas that we've had one of those. So it might not be to that extent without a defensive touchdown, but I do think they win comfortably. I think they get the lead, they score first, and they keep the lead. I hate to be disrespectful because I think it's a cool story what Tommy DeVito's doing, but he's an undrafted free agent rookie. When you watch him, that's what he looks like to me. This is a game where defensively you should look really good, and offensively you got to make plays.
Grant Paulsen catches reaction along with Danny tomorrow on 106.7 The Fan from 2 to 6:30. All right, GP, now you get to play security on my seat, and we'll see you in half an hour.
By the way, so far so good.
Excellent.
Right now, that we're better than last week at this point.
All right, excellent. Let's keep it that way. All right, hear Russell in the background. I think it's time to go. Okay, goodbye, Grant. That's Grant Paulsen with us here on the Take Command pregame show. When we get back, we'll be joined by Denton Day from our DC studios, give you our predictions and our difference makers of the game. With Logan Paulsen, I'm Craig Hoffman here on a Burgundy and Gold game day. It's the Take Command pregame show on a burgundy and gold game day. Game day kickoff just over 15 minutes, or really at this point just under 15 minutes away with Logan Paulsen. I'm Craig Hoffman, live at Tap Sports Bar, MGM National Harbor. Back in our DC studios, Toby Altizer in today for Linnell Willingham, along with Denton Day. They're hosting Burgundy and Gold Game Day live next on 106.7 The Fan. And they join us now. Boys, what's up? What's happening?
That I kind of wanted Rooster to spill something on your chair today, Craig, just for the meme of it all. But, yeah, I texted him. He said he's not going to.
Okay, and Denton's been fired. Toby, how are you doing?
I'm doing well. I pitched the idea of something other than nachos, so maybe I'm in.
Toby's also fired. What do you know, Logan? Apparently
just scored something else on there. I think that's good. That's a good bit, guys. Yeah, you should definitely text Rooster. I think at this point, how pissed he sounded, he would for sure do it. So.
Yeah,
Craig's just poking the bear.
Fat head of Rooster in our studio, so I might be able to.
I wanted to give him some motivation today, so I sat Rooster by him to give him that extra bit of a push over the edge today.
Yeah, there is. It's funny they put because when you drive up in the alley to the station, yes. There's that fat head that sits. I think it's actually in CK's office, and you can see it out of that alley. They moved that over to the 980 studio.
Nice.
And
it's the Rooster.
Yeah, it's the Rooster.
Instead of like a traveling flat Stanley, it's a flat Rooster.
Yeah, that is true. And then I did the show from home on Thursday, my home studio, and then from Capital One Arena on Friday, so I haven't had to deal with it yet. Which is clearly what everyone right now is listening for.
Yeah.
Let's get back to the breakdown, shall we? And let's actually get to our difference maker of the game. This is presented by Zips Cleaners. Zips Cleaners knows that looking good makes all the difference, whether on the field, on the job, or wherever life takes you. At just $3.29 or less per garment, we make it easy and affordable to look your best. Find a Zips near you at zipscleaners.com. All right, Toby, we will start with you, sir, your difference maker of the game.
I'm going to go with Brian Robinson. I think you got to find a way to get the run game going a little bit. We talked about the blitz all week long and how much they're going to send the blitz at Sam. If you can have Brian Robinson help out in pass protection, I'm assuming he's going to play a bigger role today with Gibson being out. And also, I think if you can get the run game going, take some off of Sam's plate that way, too, I'll go with Brian Robinson.
Nice. Denton, you, sir.
My difference maker is more than likely not going to be in pads today, although never say never, but I think it's Eric Bieniemy. The last time these two teams played, Wink Martindale blitzed his ass off, and we knew he was going to blitz his ass off, and they still didn't have a solution for it. So I'm hoping that based off of the one game that's already been played and how much better the offense has looked over the past few weeks since that one game, that Eric Bieniemy is going to have a much better, more comfortable answer for the blitz that's inevitably going to come. So I think EB is going to be the difference maker today.
Yeah. No, Logan, I know that you liked the plan last time and thought it was an execution, but I do think Denton makes a good point. It's like you got to find the best plan is the one that you can execute.
Right.
So
I guess the thing that I shake my head at with Denton, and it's not Denton, it's just everybody's perception of it, is that like those things are like basic things that they were kind of making mistakes on. And I think, as a player, maybe I'm a little bit biased towards that, but I'm saying, man, the coach put you in a position to account for some of this stuff, and we didn't get it done. So. Yeah,
I do think that one thing that EB has done a good job of the last couple of weeks, and it kind of started with the second half of that Giants game even, is giving Sam more control at the line of scrimmage, saying, hey, kid, you're going to identify the protections, and that is to certainly serve them well. All right, your difference maker of the game.
Yeah, obviously we talked about Tyler Larson. I think that's going to be a big deal. I think for me, I'm going to go Cam Curl, however. I think Cam Curl and his involvement on the defense in terms of just helping the young guys in the back end, play a little bit better. Percy had a great game last week. Cam, can you kind of manage Saquon? You're going to be a run player. You're going to be a coverage player. I think that, to me, is one of the bigger moments of this game is limiting Saquon's explosive touches. He's going to get a lot of touches. He's going to get opportunities. Just making sure that he doesn't run away with any of them. And I like Cam Curl in that matchup a lot.
I think especially with Saquon a little bit banged up, he's not quite his most explosive self, which makes that obviously a bit easier for Cam, but still a great challenge. 90% of Saquon still pretty freaking good. My difference maker is going to be Terry.
Okay.
I think that he would like to make Deontay Banks have a miserable day. It's a bit of a homecoming for Banks, obviously a Maryland kid playing down the road in Landover from where he played his college ball and in College Park. And there was some decent amount of chirping last time these two teams played. And it was the game where Terry came out afterwards and was kind of as vocal as he gets
Yep.
in terms of the game plan of like, I would like to see more fades. I would like to see some more deep shot opportunities. And I think he would love to make a couple of plays on Deonte Banks and be like, all right, kid, you want to yap? Like, welcome to the league. And I think there's going to be opportunities today for those one-on-one matchups, for some of the quick stuff to go Terry's way that obviously Sam and he have a great rapport on. We've seen some of that the last couple of weeks when they've needed to have it. Terry's been the guy to go to. Love that from EB and from Sam. And so I think that Terry McLaurin could have a big day today, and he will let Deonte Banks know about it. Which leads us to predictions for how this thing ultimately goes. Toby, we need a score and a big overarching thought.
Yeah, I mean, I think the big overarching thought for this one is I've done this show twice this year, and both times I felt like they're the better team. So it's don't go out there and beat yourself. No blown assignments on the defensive side of the ball. Take care of the football on offense. No big penalties. That sort of stuff can give the Giants a chance. I heard you guys talking earlier about how slim the margin is for New York. So don't give them help by getting stupid things on your side. So I think that's the overarching thing for me is play disciplined football. I'd love to feel a little more confident in this matchup. My prediction's not going to sound like I'm all that. I have a lot of confidence, but I really don't. But I'm going to go 24-7 Washington. I think they get it done today, but I wish I was like 100% certain they were going to win today, but I don't feel that way just yet.
Den?
I do think Washington wins 20-14 is going to be my prediction. The last time these two teams played, Sam was sacked 6 times. He's been sacked 7 times in 3 combined games after that. They've done such a good job keeping him upright, and that's Sam having more control. That's the change made at center, and I think just the game plan has been really, really strong and matched his strong suits. So if he gets sacked 3 times or less, I think Washington has a really good opportunity to put some points up.
Love that. Yeah, I love the 3 times or less thing. I'm going to say if the defense here can limit the explosive plays, I think that's something that I think is going to be huge to 1 or 2. And, there's not a lot of firepower here from this Tommy DeVito-led New York offense, so that shouldn't be too challenging. But if they find a way to get a couple big chunks, then this is going to be a ball game. But I think that they're going to win this football game. I think they cover. I think this offense is going to come out and look really, really sharp against this Wink Martindale defense. I think they were kind of embarrassed last time, and if I know anything about NFL players, they don't handle embarrassment very well. So I'm going to say 10-24, Commanders win.
I'm going to go 24-10 actually as well. Washington.
Did I steal your score?
You did, but that's fine.
Okay.
There's no rule that says we can't have the same one.
Sorry.
Especially if we wind up being right. That would be cool.
That would be awesome.
Hey, look at us, the prognosticators. Anyway, I think that there is kind of this, I mentioned this earlier in the show, there feels like there's at least one game in kind of this November, December window every year, especially in November under Rivera, where they just go out and handle business. And it's not spectacular. They're not going to go out and do what Dallas did to New York last week where they put up 49 points. But a solid 24-10, the game's never truly in doubt. You get up 10-0 early. Maybe it's 10-7 at one point, but really, it's never a one-score game after you get ahead by 10. And if the Giants can sustain one drive and get to 10, great for them. But at the end of the day, they're not going to be able to do that on a regular basis. DeVito throws a couple of picks. The Commanders just run out the clock basically in the second half. 24-10, cruise to victory, and then we see what happens on Thanksgiving in Dallas. To describe all the action give you some instant reaction analysis, it is Toby Altizer and Denton Day. They have you covered next on 106.7 The Fan for Burgundy and Gold Game Day Live. Gents, thanks for joining us. For Logan Paulsen, I'm Craig Hoffman. Thanks for listening to the Take Command pregame show. We'll see you on YouTube after the game around 5:30 for our post-game show. And, of course, don't forget the Take Command podcast, which will be coming at you with much quickness this week on the condensed week. So make sure you are subscribed wherever you get your pods. I'll see you on the radio tomorrow on the Team 980 at 4. Enjoy the game. We are off to FedEx Field.